Tangled brown hair curled over his eyebrows. Mouth shut, breathing steadily and deeply.
Oh.
Square, clean-shaven jaw. Lean, strong body, mind
Mm,
as wide as the oceans.
mm.
Night in the room next to hers. She'd come to his rescue then. In the years since, she'd thought maybe her dissociation with the all-American male had started then. She'd take her brother over a steroid-stuffed football player any day of the week.
Yeah,
What?
that's Ryan having to get that in.
What are you doing, Thomas, bro?
What are you doing, blood brother?
Thomas
What?
Hunter, listen, I'm a married man,
Mm.
but sometimes we're weak. We have to have exceptions.
Yeah, yeah,
Thomas,
yeah.
my door is always open to you.
Hey,
Just like
check
I
a
this
said,
hall
out.
pass for like, your hallway upstairs in your home.
Yeah.
yes, that's true.
Now check
That's
this out. You
true.
ready for this one? You ready for this one? I don't think you're ready for it, but check this out. Thomas Cunter, folks,
That's true.
gives you
That's
something to
true.
think about.
A lot of people are saying this.
Yeah.
And in many, many different contexts, as we'll see. Oh boy.
Hmm.
You're now listening to Socialist Shelf Radio.
This is the book where this is a Christian book. Just
Yeah.
this is how it goes.
This is what it sounds like when you're reading from a book where they love the Lord. I guess this is a new experience for you. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Not regretting it at all right now. Yeah. Uh, Lenore, do you want to do the welcome since I'm going to yap for a second about Ted Dekker?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Welcome back to the Socialist Shelf, where we have some unconventional feelings about our brothers. My name, as always, is Lenore.
Jacob here, and we have a guest, a three-peat guest, first time three-peat.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. We've had some two-peats that doesn't roll off the tongue as well, but Josh Boerman, worst of all possible worlds, welcome back to the pod.
Thank you. Excited to be back. I think like it seems like what we've sort of been doing is doing a bad book, a good book, right? Because the first one, what was the first one again? What was
No, the first one was the good one, so
the
we
first
did
one was
the
the good
good
one.
one out of the
Yeah,
way.
American
That's
War.
right. We got the good one out of the way first. So maybe we
Yeah,
can like do a sandwich next time around and
that
have it
would
be
make more
good book,
sense.
bad book, good book again. But
If
yeah, no.
if you count the worst of all possible world collabs, AJ brought a
Mm,
pretty good text. So,
yeah.
we
Yeah.
could sandwich it that way, but
So we have kind of a triple decker thing going on, and we just
Nah.
keep like stacking and stacking it. Oh,
God
it's
damn it.
infecting my mind.
He is everywhere.
It's infecting my mind.
He's the man that he's the man Frank Peretti just dreams of being. He
Hmm.
never can.
Didn't they write a
Um,
book together?
they did.
Yes.
Actually, you'll see, but Ted Dekker would not be where he is today without Frank Peretti. Frank Peretti made this man. uh, Frank giveth and taketh away. But yes, we are here to discuss. You've heard the name several times now. Ted Dekker's book, Black: The Birth of Evil, the first book in what was called the Circle trilogy, which then became the Circle series because he decided to write a fourth one, a la Inheritance Cycle, and I'm sure other books.
I just wanted to take an opportunity to say I hate it when evil is born. It's pretty much my least favorite thing.
You don't want that to happen because then like you got to deal with the evil.
Well, when it's brewing, it's bad enough. Like there's the
Yeah.
omens here, the skies weep serpents every now and then. But, that you
mhm.
can handle. You just put up an umbrella. When it's born, that's when shit kicks off.
Well, tell me this, y'all. What experience had you had with Ted Dekker, if at all, or this work in general?
So I had thought that I had read this one, but I definitely hadn't.
You'd remember.
Yeah, for sure. But I had read other Ted Dekker. I'm pretty sure I read the one that he wrote with Frank Peretti.
Mhm.
And then there was what, three? There was that book
Three with a three as one of the E's, yeah.
and that was about a serial killer that definitely wasn't Seven. Definitely wasn't the movie Seven.
Well, I mean,
right?
it was 4 whole less, you know?
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
And it was 4 times less good, yeah.
There was what I remember from three. The thing about Ted Dekker, and we'll talk about this, is that he's actually really good at writing violence. It's like the only thing he's good at writing.
Yeah.
And like weird little gnarly images that stick in your head. And there was an image in three where this guy took ice cubes and stuck them in his eyes, like push his eyeballs back into his head using ice cubes. And that was a gnarly image that stuck with me ever since. And I was like, damn, this dude, like, he's so fucked up, man. Like,
Now, that's what I call a
book, but, like,
cold
he's
stare.
fucked up.
A lot of fun Facebook groups, like Christian Facebook groups, where they debate Ted Dekker.
Oh, sure.
And like, is he gone too far, or is this what Christianity needs?
Mhm.
Lenore, any experience with Ted Dekker at all?
None previously. Like you mentioned earlier, Jacob, that this guy was basically your Leo Frankowski, right? In terms of somebody who, you unlock core memories from having read a while back, but that the other person had never heard of. And that's my relationship to this.
Yeah. The thing about this is I have a book that I wrote as a child, 14 years old, maybe. Like, I mean, to call it a book is maybe even limiting, but I wrote it when I was like 14.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's incredibly derivative of a couple books, also the Dragon books by Danita K. Paul and this book as well. Like, this was actually even though I didn't read this series more than once, Ted Dekker, like the idea of like, oh, Christianity can be edgy and it's okay, felt like permission. And so that was like super exciting to me. Even at my most passionate about this, there's a reason I never read it more than once, despite being like, a homeschool kid. Like, if I really loved a book, I read it more than once. I read these books once. So I think just that it could exist was more interesting to me than the actual book itself.
Yeah.
But that's my background.
I also think I was probably around that same age when I was reading Ted Dekker. And I was also reading a lot of Michael Crichton at the time.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Crichton is also kind of a hack, but I think he has a much stronger command of like narrative structure and writing action in a way that really allows you to visualize exactly what is happening. And I think when I read three, it was like, okay, like I see what you're doing here, but you just kind of don't, other than, again, the violence. You don't really have the sauce as a writer. I'm not so very compelled by the narrative here, but it's interesting what you're trying to do because you want to bring people to the Lord through violent books. Like it's just kind of a strange thing to do.
Refer to our 6th episode on Michael Crichton.
Oh boy, that's a callback.
Yeah, that probably is like crackles and stuff. Like, I don't even know. Pre-music, they have royalty-free music, all that.
Well, the other thing that Michael Crichton also has more of a command over, his views on climate change aside, is the science, right? Because this book does get into some science and some science, and also the way that like pharmaceutical companies work in a way that'll ring a little bit weird to people who've examined this sort of thing.
Well, and geopolitics, which when you find out this man's bio, you're gonna understand. He's got a history with geopolitics from a certain perspective.
Oh yeah, is he a politics guy?
From an angle.
Okay.
I think now is as good a time as any to get into who this guy is. His parents are inordinately important to this story. They're always important, always influences, but Ted Dekker was born in 1962 in Netherlands, New Guinea, now part of Indonesia, formerly the colony. His parents are John and Helen Dekker of Holland. Now,
oh no,
John, yeah. And they
Dutch
were
confirmed. I personally always hate to hear it. When I learned that I was Dutch, it was a horrible day for me.
Oh, don't
That
worry, they
place
didn't do
being
anything bad.
that place being called the Netherlands and also being the source of so much noxious stuff is just it sounds like a trope, but it's real.
Hmm. They were members of the Regions Beyond Missionary Union, which was a missionary organization operating under the auspices of the United Nations Executive Authority over the region.
Okay, but it's a
Um,
union, so it's good, right?
no, it's good. Actually, we're happy. We're happy with it. It would actually end up becoming called Latin Link, and now it's not much of a thing at all anymore. It's more of like a nonprofit kind of thing.
Latin
Um,
Link sounds like a weird, like Palm Pilot knockoff that they would have tried to sell in the global south in the mid 90s.
yeah, it's like that, or it's just like a bar for like tourists.
It
Latin
sounds
Link.
like you're going back to the Roman Empire trying to save the princess from
Mm,
some like pig demon.
yeah.
So, but these people were and yeah, could get a lot into the RBMU, the Regions Beyond, and its founding by Henry Grattan Guinness and the Third Great Awakening, the effect of the Irish diaspora, and all that. But there's so much that's going on.
Hold on,
But
the
it's
Dutch and the Irish? Now we're really in trouble.
Irish people that moved to the Netherlands. There's a lot,
Oh,
but that's a whole story. But the point is, they were deeply tied in with colonialism. I mean, missionaries often are, but there was a formal relationship. Um, and they were sent as representatives to the Dani people, a tribe of about 100,000 people. Now a tribe of about 90,000 people
hmm.
after all this time. And if you're interested to know what they called them, they did not refer to them as the Dani people, even though that's what everyone called them. They referred to them in English as the Headhunter tribe.
Oh,
And that is what Ted still calls them on his website,
Oh boy.
and claims things like that they were cannibals, that they practiced mass ritualistic violence, and things that I looked into and that there's just genuinely no evidence of. Um, Now, I don't know what Ted may or may not have seen in his youth, but there's some pretty big claims being made. Um, I know it's interesting looking into the history of the Dani people. Shortly before the arrival of the Dekkers, there was a battle between some Dani people where less than 200 people died, and it was considered like a society-shaking tragedy. So I have some feeling that they weren't mass murdering each other
Well,
if that was considered a tragedy on like such scale, you
and
know?
this is actually and it's actually kind of familiar to me as well because the fallout from that resulted in like a minor diaspora of these people specifically to the
Correct.
west coast of the United States, which is recorded in the Red Hot Chili Peppers song "Danny California."
with a name
You,
like that?
Jesus Christ. You were right up until you are right that there was some diaspora. It was
Hey, price you
within
gotta pay when you
Indonesia.
break the panorama.
Yeah, no, for sure.
The thing
Another
is,
another another famous Grand Rapidian, by the way, Anthony Kiedis.
really,
Yeah. I mean, we sort of think of him as a local son, but like he moved to California when he was a teenager, so like he didn't go to high school there. So it's one of those things like where is he a real Michigander or not? Hard to say.
even worse to be a traitor. The worst thing about being a traitor is that it happens because it's a friend.
Mm.
Wheels within wheels.
But yeah, it did cause a slight amount of diaspora, but within Indonesia. So many islands, it's pretty easy to just hop over. Um, not to downplay the cost, but it's an easier move than say to the West Coast and being a priestess and a priest and whatever happens in that song.
I'm
Uh,
yours. I'm your one of those. Me.
exactly. Ted describes his childhood as lonely, and this is a direct quote from him. He was forced to rely on his own imaginations to create worlds in which he belonged. End
Mood.
quote. Which, sure.
I mean that feels like a very third culture kid kind of thing to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, and I get it. He was not familiar, whatever. Obviously, his parents were probably not encouraging him to interact on a normal level with these people, given their relationship to the people. Very, exploitative and stuff like that. Definitely sympathetic to that. He read constantly. He was obsessed with Stephen King when he got a copy of The Stand at age 15.
Let's
And he read a
go.
lot of Dean Koontz as
Yeah.
well, which I have not read. I've not read as much of him, but he was really into both those things. Now he was religious, but his parents weren't worried as much about him reading sort of far and wide. They also don't seem to have had much time to spend much time with him in general. So Ted eventually moves to the United States, even though that's not where his family's from, like I said, but it's where he could go.
How old
And
was he when he moved to the States? Do you know?
18 or 19.
Okay.
Different sources say different, but around there though, it was right after graduating high school, and he immediately begins studies in religion and philosophy, gets married, has 4 kids, and then this is interesting. I keep trying to figure out, and I'm sure if I had more time, I could figure it out. But it says he worked as a marketing director for, quote, one of the biggest healthcare companies.
Mm.
I don't know which one it was. It's a little difficult to figure it out, and I wasn't over worried which one it was. But he did that for quite a while, and he had his own little small business, which was like stock trading and stuff like that. But then in the 90s, he got really interested in writing. He wrote 2 novels that he decided were trash, threw them away, and then he sold his business, quit his job, moved to Colorado, in the mountains, and just threw everything into writing. And he said, I'm going to get good at this or fail altogether. You know, if he had not been writing Christian fiction, that would have been at the death of Ted Dekker.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Yeah, no, he sort of found a good niche to go into
Yes.
because, at that point, I mean, when was his first book published? What year was that?
It was 2000.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
That we
Left
talk about
Behind.
yes,
Huh.
exactly. And we've
Wow,
talked
what a
about
year.
this on the Worst of All Possible Worlds a number of times that like there was something about like that decade, like the decade from 1990 to 2000, where there was a market that was just so completely primed to receive media. And they were seeking an alternative to the so-called secular media that was out there, and they sort of wanted to have their own version of every other thing out there. And Ted Dekker was able to slot pretty firmly in there. And then, of course, the rising distribution system that was available with things like family Christian stores and so forth were primed to deliver his product to a large audience.
Yeah,
He
I
also
mean, you
seems to have
have
been an early Amazon adopter as
Okay.
well.
aha. I mean, it is a fascinating time to be sure, and one that could only have produced one of these things because, you have the end of a major geopolitical struggle in the Cold War. You have the rise of the internet, early adoption of Amazon, you said, and also like dovetailing with, the year 2000s coming around. There's going to be some millenarianism.
He also is able to hit this intersection where he's trying to go after younger Christians, and he says over and over, and tell me if you heard this one before, I'm not a Christian author because I don't do religion. It's about the relationship, which is
Yeah.
really deep, but there were a lot of Christians who, with George W. Bush around, Ted Dekker intentionally distanced himself from Bush. He never denounced him, but he was like, he said several times in a bunch of interviews, I don't hate gay people. That was a thing he repeated several times. Later books, he seems to have changed his position on that. Or, maybe was just lying, but he was kind of doing this thing where I guess because he knew his edgy books were not going to fly at the first place with like an 80-year-old for the most part. Like, so he figured, well, younger people who were Christians or figuring it out or whatever,
Well,
that's who he aimed at.
And that's a useful point of contrast to an author like, as we've been mentioning, Frank Peretti, who incorporates a strongly reactionary social message in his books. There's the book, is it Prophet? Is that the one where like there's the main villain is like an abortionist who's like
What?
satanic? I think that's Prophet. Like,
I know he's got one where like the ACLU is literally demon possessed.
I think that's also Prophet. I think that's all the same book. Yeah.
Demons are weirdly
See, but if
weirdly
you're
Jewish coded. Yeah, it's
but
not
if you're in the
good.
service of Satan, why would you want fewer souls to corrupt?
Lenore, you can't begin to understand Satan's machinations.
Yeah, and those babies are going to hell is the thing. It's actually a shortcut. The babies get sent to hell before they even have the opportunity to get saved.
We're
You
taking it
do-
back to medieval times.
You do fight unbaptized babies in the Dante's Inferno video game.
Okay.
Like
There you
maybe
go.
that's what's going on there. Just
Uh,
babies with like blades on their arms. They like
What did Frank Peretti know? Well, what he did know is Ted Dekker was a star because when Ted's first book came out, Heaven's Wager, Frank immediately was like, "This is the new guy. Check it out." He was like, he was very much like, "Look, I discovered this guy. Everyone, get him in the stores." He was very friendly. It seems like Frank Peretti genuinely liked it. It seems like something Frank Peretti would enjoy reading. He's probably like, "Hey, I'm not the only person in this space anymore."
and he's making a real Heaven's Wager entering it.
No,
You're goddamn right, Lenore.
that's true. Heaven's Wager, by the way, is like a book about like a modern day Job, I believe. I've never read that one, just read like brief summaries. They'd end up collaborating later on House and some other things, including the film adaptation of it. Frank Peretti, we may do at some point. I'm a little less interested in him, even though I have met him myself. But whole
We
different
did-
conversation.
I will say for a little quick
Yeah,
plug
please
here
plug
for the
it.
worst of all possible worlds. We did do Frank Peretti on our podcast. We talked about This Present Darkness with Scott Benson, the creator of Night in the Woods. That is
okay.
a fun episode.
I will put
Hmm.
the link in the episode description here because it is a great episode. And I was gonna say, great analysis of that. Definitely, if we do Peretti, it'll need to be a different book because y'all said what needed to be said on that one.
Dog shit fucking book
Uh,
too. I'll tell you that for free.
Oh yeah. So let me see. Yeah, Ted says for years, "I'm not a right-wing nut. I'm not a right-wing nut." All things like that. A few years later, he would then write a trilogy about Christianity being made illegal, the word Jesus not being allowed to say. There's a scene with food fights between Christians and Muslims.
I
And
hate
it
it
was
when
like
all of that
2006.
happens. That's just such an unfortunate situation.
Well,
This
and
is
like I imagine
2006, 2007 too.
and if you're on the Christian side, like you
Mm.
can just multiply all your fish and all your bread that you can throw. So
Yeah,
you
that's
have an
kind of
unfair
OP.
advantage right off the bat.
That's kind of OP.
I did read that trilogy. Like, there's a whole argument in that trilogy of will the American government change the name of the city of St. Louis because is that offensive? Because the word saint.
That's in another book that I read. There's this book by Chuck Colson, where it's mostly like Colson, one of Nixon's fixers who served
Sure.
some time for doing that. For those not familiar, he wrote a book, and I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. Most of it is pretty boilerplate, like evangelical shit about how we ought to govern. But the first like 40 pages are a speculative fiction story that is set in the late 90s where the president has to stop the apocalypse from happening in the Levant. And as a piece of this, it's like Israel-Palestine, they're going at it. And the thing about St. Louis is in there.
Interesting.
They were like, they had to rename it. The ACLU made them rename St. Louis. And there were a couple other cities too. That's such a weird, strange bugbear, and it's weird that it showed up twice.
It's
I realize
either
that's a
like
bit of a
a
tangent,
reference. No, it's either a reference or they just came up with the same thing. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean,
I would
it
have
could
to
very
read
well
those
be.
passages.
I can see people independently coming to that conclusion. Although there are a lot of other cities you have to change as well. Los Angeles, hello.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he ends up doing that. But 2004, this is the series we're talking about, and this is to
Right.
date still his most popular. Black, The Birth of Evil, and then he would go on and write Red, and then White, and then Green, the Circle series. And this would spawn a multiverse, sort of, the Deckerverse. It has the tie-in books, the Books of History series, which is
Oh,
5
that's
books.
what we want. Lore for this fucking universe.
It's
Jeez
actually not a
Louise.
lore. They're not actually not lore books. They're a book series called the Books of History that are about items called the Books of History inside the books, which, while less intolerable than lore books would be, is more confusing.
Are they they're the books that are key? Is this like a fucking like Cyan Worlds type thing where
There
they're
are
like
books
the books that you
inside
find
the
in
world that are
world?
magic. Yeah, inside the world of like the colored forest and stuff, there are books.
Oh,
And if you combine them in the real world, you can like change the laws of reality.
So they
Yeah.
got
have
it.
books, like they have printing presses there. Like that's what confused
Unclear.
me, like the technology level of this like alternate like Eden world, but we can get into that.
So
Unclear. But the
you
villain of
open
those
up.
books is named Alucard, and I'm not kidding.
Oh, that's what's up. So you open up the book and there's like a moving picture of a world that you can travel to, and then you put your hand on the book and it sucks you in. Is that
Oh,
what
so it's a
happens?
mist kind of thing?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Hmm.
I don't remember honestly that detailed. I know there's like a portal, but
Well,
I don't remember
okay, it's
how
missed.
elaborate.
Sorry, I just got done playing Riven the other day, so like I'm fully cyan pilled right
Mm,
now.
mm, mm,
Okay.
mm.
Okay. Completely unfamiliar with that. So I know what it is, but never played. Have to give it a shot at some point. Um, but yeah. That's I remember that series specifically because in the third book there's a pocket dimension and a guy goes on a mass shooting in it. It has no consequences really because he doesn't know what guns are. But he's
Hmm.
really sad, and his name is Billos, and every time he kills someone, he goes dead by Billos. And I
Dead by
remember that. And I remember thinking it was so funny that like I would say it, but no one got the joke. But I was like, it was so funny to me. It was
No,
like a
that's good. It's
bit.
like this one's just for me.
Yeah, exactly. That's like a
Like, do you really
seventh
want to
grader.
explain to people the Columbine dimension, you know?
Yeah,
Right
right.
now. I mean, like I tried, and then people were like, that was in the library.
Take a look, it is in a book.
My school library, my Christian school library was meticulous
Hmm.
about what was allowed in, and that one made it in.
Okay.
But to wrap up Ted here, because I won't go too far into what he's been doing because he's just been writing more books kind of like this. He's written over 40 now, over 15 million copies sold. On his website, he claims NPR called him one of the best suspense authors ever. I looked into it and I didn't find that source. I don't know if somebody on NPR said it. Like I'm not quite sure what he's
I
talking about.
I bet it was like some guy at a local NPR affiliate, right?
Mhm.
Like rather than national NPR, it was
Hmm.
probably like the local station said it at some point. And because it was an NPR affiliate, he could be like, as Stead on NPR.
Right. But he's still, writing, and his books have not reached the acclaim, or not the acclaim, but the heights they used to. But he does a good living, and his daughter does make pretty good money now as well as a writer of a Christian fantasy and dystopia series. You're not ready to hear what his daughter's name is.
I'm
His
ready.
daughter's name is Rochelle, spelled exactly like
Oh
Rochelle
no.
from the book.
No. Hold on. Wait,
Mm,
when was
mm,
she
mm, mm,
born?
mm, mm.
Before the books were written.
Like a while before? Like do you know do you know what her
And
year of birth is?
it looks I can double check, but here, let me
She
double
would
check.
have she would have been an adult by the time the books came
Well,
out.
that's the
Let me double
question.
check so I can I
This is a
can
very important question for reasons that will become clear to the listener momentarily.
Oh boy.
1986,
It's 1986, so she would have been 20 years old
something like that.
when this
Yeah.
book was published. Oh,
No,
no.
18.
18? 2004.
Yeah,
Yeah.
04, yeah.
Either way. Okay, so an adult.
hmm
Hate that. Hate
Yeah.
that so much.
Yeah. So there's something there too.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And I didn't not and so
Oh,
there's
Lenore, that description at the very beginning of the book, that was from
No,
Michelle's
no, no,
perspective,
no.
was it not?
That wasn't from Rochelle's perspective. That was from the sister's perspective, Kara.
Oh, that's right. Because there's also definitely incestuous overtones in this book.
They're so horny for
There's a
each other.
there's a lot going on here.
Mm.
Mhm. And that's basically the deal with Ted Dekker.
Well,
And
Jacob,
that leads
do,
us into black.
do his books bring you wholeness?
Me?
Do his
They
books bring you wholeness, Josh?
Yeah, no, I mean, I gave my life over to the Lord after I finished reading this book.
I
Mission
drowned
accomplished.
in the waters of Elion.
That's right.
As long as you didn't drink the water in the Black Forest, you're
No,
fine.
I tried to drown
No.
myself and I ended up drowning in the water of Elion. That's not in this book, but in the third book, you become able to you have to actually die, like the drowned men
Oh,
in
cool.
A Song of Ice and Fire, but then God brings you back, but then you're saved.
Jacob,
And
was it you who I was talking to not too long ago about Newsboys and how they have a song that like could just as much be about
Yeah.
committing suicide by drowning
Yes.
as okay, great.
Same type beat.
Love it.
It's fascinating, but yeah, recurring themes once again, but this is the book, and right off the bat, we jump straight in to intrigue, to mystery, to beneath these dark mountains, a meeting between the bad guy, Carlos, who is a scary Muslim who wants to destroy Israel.
Yeah,
Welcome to 2004 and welcome to 2024.
it's also interesting now knowing that Ted Dekker grew up in Indonesia. It's very interesting that he has
Yeah.
such a strong distaste for Muslim people,
Yeah.
given where he's from.
And literally grew up in and grew up like it was a settler colony at the time when he was living there, the part of Indonesia he was living in.
Yeah.
Like still like a formal settler colonial situation.
Right. So, in other settler colonial frontiers, we know exactly which side his bread is buttered on.
Yeah. Well, but that's the setup. We have Carlos as the prologue POV working with Valborg Svensson.
Yes, famous Swedish communist politician and journalist Valborg Svensson.
Literally, yeah, Lenore, you did find that. Yeah.
Wait, that's a real guy?
Literally, I looked this
It's
up.
a woman, actually.
Yes, actually, a woman, Valborg Svensson. I looked up the name just because I was curious about the character, and I found Valborg Svensson, born 1903. She was a member of the Swedish Communist Party. She was a journalist and stuff. And is there a connection? Who knows?
I feel like that can't be a coincidence. That's way too specific of a name.
So it's so strange though, because they're not similar at all in any way.
Yeah, she wasn't in medicine at all. She wasn't in business.
And yet it's the same name. And he doesn't like communists.
It might literally just be what's a wild name. I read about this, socialist.
I can kind of respect that.
Yeah.
I can kind of respect being like, I heard a cool name once.
Yeah, I mean, it's like how in my next book, the villain's name is Ben Shapiro.
As you should. As you should.
But he's not like a radio guy or anything. He actually, he's a pharmaceutical technician, so.
That's good.
First of all, I just want to say that if you heat this vaccine to a specific temperature for 2 hours, it becomes a virulent plague. Just getting that out there.
All right, Lenore, this is over.
Sorry, I had to get that out of my system.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
A pretty good Ben Shapiro, though, will drive me up and
So I sent you a screenshot of this page, Jacob, and I think you, Josh, as well, because it immediately plunged me into the sort of vibe that we're getting here. If I can just share the first couple of sentences here.
Yes, please.
So Switzerland, we start off in Switzerland. Carlos Mysserian was his name, one of his many names, born in Cyprus. The man who sat at the opposite end of the long dining table, slowly cutting into a thick red steak, was Valborg Svensson, one of his many, many names. Born in hell. Now, is this literally the case? Because I suspect it might be.
No,
but
it wasn't.
I do think, given sort of the tone, like the world building here, that's a valid question to ask.
Sure. Yeah, he is working for the Antichrist, so I mean that's what he's going for. This first part is almost camp. It's like cutting the steak
goes so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's bits and pieces that are just unabashedly goofy that in ways that I very much appreciate. But it goes off the rails not in fairly short order. But as soon as Tom starts going around and doing stuff, Tom is our protagonist. We haven't met him yet. There's bits and pieces here that I have fun with, but that just get totally lost in the morass of weirdness.
Mm-hmm.
I do love Carlos. Carlos sliced a thick slab of beef with a razor sharp blade and watched the flesh separate, like the parting of the Red Sea.
Absolutely.
We love watching flesh separate.
We've got a little bit here about Carlos's motivation, right? And Carlos didn't care to understand the depths of their madness. This is talking about the people who he works for, of course. He only knew they were the kind of people who would get what they wanted, and in the process, he would get what he wanted. The restoration of Islam.
Fortunately, it'll get restored. It's not around anymore.
No.
But we're bringing it back, folks. We're bringing it back.
Totally
Islam
not one of the biggest, fastest growing religions in the world.
I mean, if Islam didn't exist in 2004 and it's researched this much, I'd say Carlos pulled it off, actually.
Mhm.
We're bringing it. We're bringing it. We're bringing it. We're bringing it back. Islam. Bum, 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 bum.
Shout out to Carlos.
I would say, obviously 2004, we can talk about the political context. We say Iraq, Afghanistan, all war on terror, all that. Honestly, that shows up a lot with how much they hate the French in this book.
Yeah.
But I also say it won't feel particularly unfamiliar right now.
No,
But
I did like that,
yeah.
how they bring in a French babe just to sexualize and also dunk on her. I thought that was pretty great.
And her whole people. Wait
Yeah.
till later when it turns out the entire nation of France is working for the Antichrist. That's in
Wait,
later
for
books.
What?
seriously?
The government is in bed with the Antichrist.
Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, and the US has to turn over its entire nuclear arsenal and fleet to France. It's so cool.
Oh my God, that's the sort of shit that you would see in like a sequel to Team America.
Yeah. The UK and like Israel have to team up to like go against the now French occupied US fleet.
Oh
There's
my
there,
God.
there's some like what's his name? Roland Emmerich shot of the Statue of Liberty, but she's holding a baguette instead of a torch.
Yeah.
It was a French op the whole time. But right off the bat, we know we hear what the plan is. They're making a bioweapon. Once again, I mean, it's a thing we're always scared of at the time, think about it, anthrax scare, all that. But the constant thing, a virus that is developed, even more dangerous potentially than a nuclear weapon. It can spread around the world. And if you're the one with the antidote, then you can choose who lives and dies. Pretty simple. That's the plan. Now it doesn't go too much into all the details here. In fact, it turns out at this point they don't even have the virus. They're very confident in this plan, virusless, but they have massive webs. And they're waiting to catch just anything, including just some guy with dreams who leaks that. But
Well, he's got some fucking crazy ass and accurate dreams.
Dream on,
These aren't just ordinary dreams. Our boy Tom, I mean, he's locked in. He's locked into some other dimension, and I mean, we learned that pretty quickly here. He's in two worlds at the same time. This guy.
He's a student of the histories, you might say.
Yeah.
And I found that like this is a direct quote, and this one line doesn't make the book bad or the writing bad, but it's things like he moves slowly like a sloth, favoring his right leg. It's just the prose is also like that constantly, like always saying like a this and this, just doing more than it needs to do. Just it seems like Dekker is kind of a lot of the times writing how he thinks he's supposed to sound.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing he's running into a lot. He uses a lot of cliches that he really should not be. Like, it's easy to say all the time, he's stopped in his tracks. And he says this constantly, but you typically won't actually see that in up-to-date fiction just because people try to not repeat the same phrases. It certainly happens.
I also noticed conversely that he does a really annoying thing that Frank Peretti also does, which is rather than just write normal dialogue where it's like blah 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 this person said, because that mechanically is not something that you ever clock, he'll write dialogue in this weird way where people will sometimes you can't even tell who's talking, like if there are multi-directional conversations going on. But people will, exult and do things like that, which is also a Jerry B. Jenkinsism. This is very common in Christian fiction for some reason, and I don't know why.
The weird dialogue tag, yeah, and how did this visitor happen to come across this information? Svensson hesitated.
Well, it's extra funny because I listened to a decent amount of this because I was driving to Florida. And so I was like, you know what, I'll listen. And the dialogue tags crack me up extra because I kind of, mute them when I'm reading it just with my eyes. A lot of the little ticks jumped out at me while I was listening to it because I'm like, this actually drags more than you'd think when you're listening to it because the eyes can, glaze over the fifth description of the same bridge. But when you have to listen to it, oh boy. But
I did want to say, I think that's an interesting point that you made, Jacob, though, about like how it almost feels like he's writing what he thinks writing ought to sound like, as opposed to just trying to write the story. There's so many strange flourishes here that just feel like they're not germane to the storytelling at all, and they're not even cool to read or to think about. They don't paint any sort of picture in your mind. They don't enhance the world. They're just there in a way where the writing calls attention to itself in a very amateurish way that makes it feel like it's being written by a teenager, Frank.
Thank you, thank you. That was on my mind this whole text through. Like there are these little flourishes of cadence that don't appear like ever again in the book, but that call attention to themselves anyway. Like this time he saw the bullet plow into the brick. This time he felt a sting on his cheek as tiny bits of shattered brick burst from the impact. This time every muscle in his body ceased. First of all, ceased to what? But second of all, right, when you have that repetition, like you're primed for something much more important than literally the first thing that happens in the book, which is just a bullet missing you. This is a strong month for bullets missing people.
Jesus. The it doesn't, spoilers if someone really wants to read all these books. Turns out these weren't loan sharks shooting at him. These are people from the other world who teleported back in time to try and kill Thomas Hunter. And the books
Oh.
form a time loop
Okay,
because Ted
so
Dekker thought that would be cool.
I
Huh.
actually like that better because he leaves the mob thing completely hanging.
Yeah, I mean, it's not very satisfying in the other book, the time loop thing either. I think Ted Dekker just does it so he could call them the circle books. It's because it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the actuality of the story, but neither here nor there. We
Will the
open
circle
up.
be unbroken by and by, by and by?
It isn't broken because you could just keep reading it in circles and circles. Ted Dekker even says in an interview, if you want to just keep reading it in a circle, some people say they can't put it down. I'm like, God, I feel bad for them. But we open up with it all started one day earlier with a single silenced bullet out of nowhere. Thomas Hunter was walking down the same dimly lit alley he always took on his way home after locking up the small Java hut on Colfax and Ninth, when smack punctuated the hum of distant traffic. Red brick dribbled from a 1-inch hole 2 feet away from his face.
Brick
He
doesn't dribble.
stopped mid-strike. It does in Denver, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
The
that's what I've been.
The liquid brick of Denver, Colorado.
That'd be sick. Yeah. So it opens up with our boy being shot at. And y'all want to tell us who Thomas Hunter is, aside from the obvious that we found out at the top of the episode?
Yeah,
Sure.
he's well, so the book says he is a novelist. We don't see much of him writing. I mean, we do
Yeah.
come back to like him being a storyteller here and there, but like there's never any indication that he's got a manuscript he's working on, like this, that, the other. And he's locking up at the Java Hut. He's a barista, I guess, by day.
Yeah,
Just your
and
everyman.
by night he's Garrett from Thief. He is an incredible like guy who can steal stuff and traffic in it and like go from place to place bringing around these priceless artifacts which he then fences for a profit. Uh Again, like Garrett in Thief, but he's also Alan Wake, including the fact that like he sometimes goes to another reality.
Much like Alan Wake, except he has never published a book and never will, as far as I can tell. Thomas is 25, young guy, fit guy, raised in the Philippines. It's going to tell you that a bunch of times. Ted Dekker says he sees a lot of himself in Thomas. I think that's why he throws the writer thing in.
Oh, does he?
Do y'all know what Ted Dekker looks like, by the way?
Is he hot?
I mean, tell me what you think. I'm going to send it in the
Yeah,
chat
yeah, yeah,
right
yeah.
here.
He's bad.
Mm,
That's a picture he actually put on his book, which I think is really funny.
He looks like a magician.
Yeah, mind freak or something.
Either that or like the lead singer of a Norwegian synth pop band circa
Yeah.
2003,
Exactly. Maybe that was what he was actually doing instead of the medical company, and that's why we can't
Sure.
find records.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, he seems to see himself in Thomas. He's constantly referring to Thomas just wearing a t-shirt and
Yeah,
jeans,
he's
and
cool, man.
Yeah.
Avatar of
Hmm.
traditional masculinity.
he is. He knows some karate course, which allows him to escape.
Which allows
And-
him to run up a wall and kick a gun out of a gunman's hand.
Yeah, he does some like actual Matrix moves.
Look, the Matrix hadn't been out that long, and you had to work it into everything. So I hear.
One
You can
other
give
little bit about the writing that I did just want to say, that very first sentence made me distrust the writing. Like, yes, technically bullets are silenced, but when you think about a bullet, like the bullets themselves they don't make a lot of noise except for when they're leaving the chamber. So the
Mhm.
thing that you are silencing is the gun. You're putting a suppressor on your gun. You're not silencing the bullet. I mean, you are sort of. You know what I mean? Like it's just one
Uh-huh.
of those things where it's like this is weird, right?
yeah,
It's a bit strange.
there's bits and pieces where like the description and like the prose doesn't really jive with what you know to be true about the world. Like I mean he describes Denver's brilliant skyline in the later part of this chapter. I've been to Denver. It's fine.
Mhm.
Also, if you're in Denver, the skyline's not the thing you're going to be looking at. It's the fucking mountain.
Mhm. He's not impressed because he's seen the forests of Ilion himself.
Oh.
But maybe worth noting Thomas's backstory. Josh, do you want to kind of share what Thomas's sort of his origin story is, the Philippines and the dad and
Oh.
all that?
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do my best to remember.
Fine if not, it's
I didn't
mind
take
numbing.
careful notes here, but to the
You're all
best of
right.
my memory, yeah, he basically he was an army brat, navy brat,
Yeah, Army brat.
army brat, who was born in the Philippines, and then kind of like bounced around a little bit, but spent most of his early years in Manila.
Hmm.
And his whole deal then is that he also is a third culture kid,
Yes.
much like Ted Dekker.
Hmm. And his dad was a chaplain who ran out on their family. So
That's right.
here is Ted Dekker sort of working in that, like it's not about religion, it's about relationship sort of thing. He likes to do this in other stuff, the hypocritical Christian, to say, hey, the hypocrite is just as bad as, it's, and I guess acknowledging hypocrisy is important, but
Yeah. Well, and this is a very important note, too, that Thomas is not a Christian, in no
no.
small part due to the fact that his father's actions did not match his rhetoric. And
Hmm.
so he and his sister, whose name is Kara, right?
Hmm.
Kara?
Yeah.
Kara.
They both kind of have Christianity has left a bad taste in their mouth. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Usually Christian novels, if you're not a Christian, at least as an American, like you have a reason you're not a like there like a
Yeah.
reason, like a trauma or an anger or something along those lines.
Ideally, both.
Ideally both. Honestly, you don't feel a lot of rage from Thomas in this, but it's also pretty quick that he sees physical evidence of God. So, maybe just not as much time to do it.
You
But
do see rage from Thomas if you're a service worker.
even though he is one. Uh, Also, one note, his neighborhood in the Philippines made the Bronx look like a preschool. And I want to note that. And I think that's cool.
That is cool. What is that like? Again, I don't want to be that fucking guy, but like, if you think about that for a second, like what the writing is doing makes the Bronx look like a pre. Like, what do you mean, man? Like, what are you talking about? That like the mean streets would teach you more than the mean streets of the Bronx, I guess is what he's going for, but you'd have to write that in order for it to actually make sense.
Exactly. Otherwise, you're just leaving it to whoever reader to fill in the blank in whatever way,
Right. Now,
for better
to
or for
to
worse.
be fair, the Bronx is strictly populated by 3-year-olds. That's something that not a lot of people from New York City who aren't from New York City know about, but it is true.
Mhm.
It's
Well, I
weird,
mean,
actually.
Thomas Hunter could take a horde of 3-year-olds, like several
Yeah,
hundred before he broke a sweat. Let's
that's
be
big
honest.
facts.
It would
That's
be
big
so
facts.
easy. Yeah, exactly right.
You pick up
And
one, you start using it as a blunt weapon. 2 3-year-olds, you're wielding like tonfas, like.
Mm.
we've done a lot of setup here, and that's just on like the characters, and that's partially because like I don't have so much interest in this just fucking meandering awful plot. But
No.
I'm not gonna go into it all. Thomas has $100,000 in debt. He thinks he's being chased by loan sharks. He's
Right.
not. He's got failed business ventures. He lives with his sister that he thinks is hot.
Yep.
Um,
He's doing Garrett from Thief, where he's like finding small scores that he can pawn off later, and
mhm,
that is what has gotten him in trouble with these loan sharks. He thinks.
mhm. Which could be interesting if they, if they did anything with that in this book.
So wait, if it's not the loan sharks chasing him for money, what are the loan sharks doing?
They're not here.
They're just they're just out there. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
Not worry.
Neither should Thomas. No, if he had stayed in his apartment, he still would have died, but he would have been killed by people from the other Earth,
Hmm.
who were mad at him for things he would do 15 years in the future.
And we get a glimpse into the other Earth in
Yes.
chapter 2, very
This is
briefly.
the central conceit. Yeah.
Yes. Him and this guy Bill that keeps popping up.
Who may or may not exist.
Yeah, we're not clear on that even as the book ends.
Sincerely, I don't remember if Bill is still alive. I read
Great.
the summaries of the other books again, and it doesn't mention Bill, so I have to assume he's fake. I took a bookmark of the beginning of the Black Forest, even
Yeah.
though it says
The bats that Valborg Svensson mentioned, this is where they live.
yeah.
Right.
The man's eyes snapped open. A pitch black sky above, no lights, no stars, no buildings, only black and a small moon. He blinked and tried to remember where he was, who he was. But all he could remember was that he'd just had a vivid dream. He closed his eyes and fought to wake. He dreamed that he was running from some men who wanted to hurt him, yada yada. He sat up, disoriented, the shadows of tall, dark trees, and this will go on for a while, but he's awake in a dark forest, he's bleeding, he's trying to remember, and now he's like, oh, that was a dream the whole time. This is the real world.
Yeah.
And he's gonna do this back and forth. He goes to sleep, he will wake up in the other world. And then he'll be like, am I dreaming in this world or dreaming the other world? The one he's currently awake in feels the most real.
And that shit goes on way too long. Like
Yeah.
he has like 4 or 5 times that he goes back and forth, and for some reason Ted feels it necessary to once again clarify that he is in fact on the other side because he fell asleep, and he's like, "Oh, that other side was just a dream." And it's just not mechanically necessary.
No. He remains like, even very late in the book, he's still like just now and again, and maybe Ted would be like, oh, it's hopeful thinking, but going like, oh, it could be a dream. It's constantly doing this, and that's one thing Ted likes to do, is to repeat the same point over and over and over. Not even just like a point about like religion. I mean like a point about anything. Like I said, I counted. There's a bridge in this book that gets described 5 times.
Right.
Like it's just a thing he does. But yeah, there's a forest with black bats, and they try to fucking eat him.
Mm-hmm. And at the beginning, in his sort of first encounter with the bats, they almost succeed. I mean, we get, again, some pretty like detailed, gruesome imagery of the fact that they have flayed away pretty much all of his skin by the time he makes it out of that fucking forest.
And he and yeah, Ted loves to describe that shit. He
Yep.
he loves to talk about just the brutal, bloody. Let's see. Yeah, we've got like him running, and it's like fangs sink into his left cat. Pain shot up his spine. The last threads of reason fell from his mind. Time and space ceased to exist. Only reaction remained. The only messages that managed to get through the buzz in his brain were to his muscles, and they said, run or die, kill or be killed. He smashed at his calf. The black bat fell away, but took a chunk of flesh with it. And it goes on. One grabs his thigh, one grabs his ass, like one, and it describes, vaguely aware that his moccasins and most of his clothes were gone, leaving only a loincloth. He could feel fangs working at his thigh. This will be one of many scenes where Thomas Hunter like loses his clothes for some reason.
Yeah, he's only wearing a loincloth?
That
What was that all about?
I missed that at first, but that jumps out at me now because like there's a back and forth like later in the book where like he's talking to like the Satan figure in this world, and he's like, oh, like you not actually belong in this world, like you came here on a spaceship or whatever. And it's like, okay, but if that's the case, how are you fleeing the spaceship in a loincloth that you would have acquired on this planet?
The bats gave it to him before they started. They wanted him to be decent.
Well, right. I mean, come on.
No, it's just your standard issue NASA loincloth.
I actually, I do think it may genuinely just be that like he couldn't have him be nude, right?
No,
because it's a Christian book.
not
Oh
like
my
this.
God.
Even though
think
he
that's it.
likes, he likes like him to take clothes off. Like when he's with
Yeah.
Monique de Raison, he's like, it's hot in here, and he takes his shirt off, and that's literally why, is because it's actually hot in there,
Right.
and he just wants Monique de Raison to be impressed by his back, but he can't quite make the
Also his
jump to
neck,
nudity.
also his pussy, also his crack.
Also his
Hmm.
crack. We don't get those last two parts in this book, but wait for the tie-in novel, Skin.
Right, right.
He does have a book called Skin, and nothing like that happens in that one either.
God, the FOMO.
Which, yeah, what a lie. But yeah, it's a Garden of Eden situation. And this is the first of what will come to be a number of concepts that it's like, okay, Ted, I see that you're an imaginative guy. You've got something going on here. Now, he's definitely working on a tradition here. There's a lot. Have either of y'all read C.S. Lewis's Paralandra before?
No.
No.
Okay. Familiar at all?
Nope.
Nope,
Okay,
nope. This
people
is the
know
first I'm hearing of
Narnia.
it.
People know Narnia. People
Oh,
even
this for the
know,
first time?
hearing this for the first time. Paralandra, I'm hearing this great book. This is a fantastic book. It was he wrote a space trilogy, Lewis did. And the second book in it was called Paralandra, and it's about Venus. And there is a Garden of Eden on Venus.
Okay.
And it's basically this same situation, retelling of the Garden of Eden. And it's like, what if we got another shot at it and things went differently? And the conceit of that book is Lewis having a stand-in character who goes there to intervene, and the Satan character he literally beats to death before he can tempt Eve.
Damn.
Which is Lewis missing the point really hard. But worth noting, he was in a feud with Tolkien at the moment, and he based the Satan character on Tolkien. So he literally beat Tolkien to death in the book just because he was mad at them.
We love a petty bitch, don't we?
Honestly, yeah, it makes me like C.S. Lewis more.
Don't piss me off, or I'll put you in my novel.
The other big thing that jumped out at me from this chunk is, what happens once he makes it out of the forest.
Yes.
Because, he's nearly dead. And all of a sudden there is these like white furry angel guys, I guess, who
He
rescue
literally
him?
describes them as furries at several points.
Yeah. So he's being saved by furries, and I'm just gonna read this here because we got Michael, who's one of the furries, and he says regarding Michael, Michael tilted his head and studied the man's rising back. Fresh blood still oozed from 3 gaping holes at the man's neck, his buttocks, his pussy, and his right thigh, where the shataiki, those are the bats, shataiki, had eaten him to the bone. His flesh quivered under the hot sun. There was something strange about the man. It was strange enough that someone from one of the distant villages had entered the Black Forest at all. It had happened only once before. But the strangeness was more than that. He could smell the stench that came from the man's ragged breathing, like the smell of the shataiki bats. Well, let's get it on with then. You have the water? Hello? They both turned as one. A young woman stood at the edge of the clearing, eyes wide. Rochelle.
Ted Dekker's daughter. No, not in this
Oh.
book.
Well,
I
again.
sure hope not. I mean, we can't determine exactly what's going on with that, but in this book, Rochelle is, make of it what you will, the love interest, not Eve, because this Garden of Eden was allowed to grow to a population of 1 million people because no one fucked it up. We didn't have somebody go and eat the fruit. In this case, drink the water. Nobody fucked it up. We managed to get to a population of 1 million with nobody fucking it up. We got this perfect society, we've got agrarian communism going on here or something, religious peasant society. And yeah, we've got Rochelle, who's like gonna be the Eve, and she's like, well, this guy's hot, and since all men are perfect, I'm gonna claim him as my mate.
Yeah, I mean, she is like fucking head over heels for him immediately, despite knowing less than zero about him.
She's like biting her lip, winking, everything.
There's a certain like ineffability to the romance, the great romance they call it in this book, right? As the love of their god figure Elion for them, and vice versa. So the love between man and woman.
Yeah,
and
it's a great romance, capital G, capital R, by the way.
Yes, exactly. And
what's so great about it?
It's the way they put it is, let's see, they talk about it. Like, basically by Tom's nature, right? Any woman who chooses him, he would love, is the way that Michael and Gable, the other angel thing, that furry,
Michael and
explain
Gabriel,
it,
yeah. I
right?
mean, they call him Gable, but you know
Yeah,
you know what he's saying.
it's the
Yeah,
Yeah,
archangels. Yeah.
yeah.
exactly.
They're
And
bats.
because Tom says very early on, well, I barely know this girl. How do you know that we're gonna have this romance? And they're like, look, if you were to meet your mother but didn't remember her, would you stop loving her? Which I'm reading this and I'm like, you wouldn't know who she was.
Yeah,
Like,
like maybe, I don't know.
I mean, it's that there's a parallel here that I'm not quite bridging the gap to, like between this and like Immaculate Conception, right? The idea that, oh, because Mary was born without sin, like she's perfect and thus like she would, go along with bearing the Son of God and whatnot. Like, is that what he's doing here? Like, I'm not sure how to parse this.
I guess if all people are perfect, the idea is that all pairs, are going to be perfect intersections. The
Hmm.
problem is that is then going to basically say that is basically saying that in their perfection, they are at least identical enough that they're the same puzzle pieces fitting together, rather than you would hope in a perfect world of a million people. There's still a lot of variety, and
Hmm.
you would still need to meet the right person. And in a society that values romance so much, especially monogamous romance, because it's one person. It's not a free love, great romance. It's a you get married. Of course, it's
Yeah.
Christian. It makes sense. You'd think it's like pursuing your partner and you have literally eternity to do it. Uh, you'd think, and maybe that's a source of conflict, as Rochelle made that commitment so quick to this guy. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe that's a thing. And Rochelle is impulsive, and that's not necessarily a sin, but everyone's like, I don't know if that was wise, but I don't know. That's just me like trying to script doctor here.
Well,
But
but that's the thing. Like the text equates Rachel choosing him as his mate with her like bringing him wholeness, as it says, right? Healing him, like baby birding the magical water in his mouth that like makes him like grow back all his skin, right? So any eligible woman healing a man in this world, that's a marriage proposal, apparently. Like, I mean, I'm reading this and I can't help but think we just read that Tom's sister is a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Like these two things are juxtaposed here in a way that I can't let go of.
earlier today I had a headache, and my husband went in the store and got ice cream for me, and I didn't have to walk in, and in
Hell
many
yeah.
ways I felt like Thomas in that moment. So I do understand. Uh,
The butter pecan that sealed a bullet hole.
Hmm.
uh,
So sorry, I'm just
yeah,
I'm still hung up on Rochelle, and I
yeah,
want to I found finally something that I was looking for,
good.
which is a description of her appearance.
Hmm.
I'm going to read this description to you, and then I'm going to show you something. There, under the eaves of a house 20 feet away, leaning against the amber wall, with arms crossed and head tilted, stood Rochelle, bare feet, simple blue dress, tousled hair, brilliant green eyes, tempting smile. We've also learned a little earlier in the book that she also has sort of like some nice brown hair.
Hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead now and show you guys an image, just sort of dropping that in the chat real quick.
Yep,
That's
yep,
a picture of Rochelle Dekker, who, by my estimation, has some nice green eyes
yep.
and some mid-length brown hair.
Oh dear, this is
Yeah.
making all my muscles cease.
Uh, oh, yeah. God. It's interesting because I made this connection like right before we got on the show, like when I was
Yeah,
doing some last whatever.
yeah.
If this
Thank
is
you
some
for doing that, by the way.
the thing is, if I had made this connection a few days ago, maybe I would have done a deep dive. But it's interesting, all the reviews of these books, everything,
mm,
I have not come across anyone making this point once. I don't know if this is a Socialist Shelf exclusive. It certainly
yeah,
shouldn't be. It certainly can't be. Someone must have made this point, but I have not seen it in the main like not scholarship, but
yeah.
I mean, New York Times has reviews of these books. These books sold well. Nobody mentioned this, which I think is some kind of massive failure.
She is
Uh,
a baddie, by the way. I will say
she looks
that. Like
nice. She's a nice looking
she's a
woman,
good looking
Undeniable,
lady.
undeniable.
and
Um,
she's apparently got husband, and I hope they're happy doing their thing. And who knows, maybe her books are better than her dad's.
But there's something I was like, okay, the moment, Jacob, that you said that thing about the name, I was like, I guarantee
Yep.
that she literally is like, so I'm trying to imagine too what it would be like to be reading this and be like, oh, Dad, you put me in a book, and then, I don't know,
As
I
the
don't
love interest of a guy who looks exactly like him.
right.
Well, and they do have a child together in the next book. They
Oh,
bear
of
a
course.
child.
You're the love, like the protagonist, the primary protagonist of this book is a man who is very clearly a stand-in for my dad. The most beautiful woman he's ever seen is very clearly not just a stand-in for me, but literally me.
Mm-hmm. Not even if it's interesting because this world does fantasy name versions of people. It does
Yeah,
Gable. Not
yeah. You
no,
could have
not
called
even
her
Rachel.
Rachel or
Even that would have
Rickle
made it
or
that would have made it more biblical, actually. But no,
I don't like this. I really don't like
it's
this.
Oh,
it's and there's not a ton to say about the Kara Thomas connection, but it's something I picked up on
Mm,
through it. And
yes.
the fact that this is a thing in it too makes me feel all the more confident that I wasn't just being a weirdo looking for weird
she's
shit.
No,
she's first
no,
described in chapter 5 here, like blue eyes, as bright and feisty as ever. First of all, I don't like women being described as feisty. I've never seen it in a positive context. It's always like, oh, you're real feisty trying to escape from the like being tied to the railroad tracks. And I doubly don't like it when they're the sister of the protagonist.
Yeah,
Mm.
there's like this part in the book where she keeps brushing his hair.
Mhm. As one
You
does.
know, like you do with your sister or with your brother, I guess. That's casual.
But
I love to have my sister run her hand through my hair.
mm,
Like what are we doing here, Ted? What's going on?
Ted, he sitting alone in Indonesia. Yeah, something he was exposed to something. I don't know. Who can say? I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I know what he's doing, and I really don't like it. I don't know why he would expose himself like it. Yeah, I don't know why I said it. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know how many more ways to restate it except that I'm
No,
horrified by it.
yeah, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad.
Real bad. Really colors everything. And it doesn't. It colors it badly, not just black, green. Yeah, all the colors.
They're in the
Horrible.
colored forest.
It's a dark mark on it, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Ted Dekker deserves, everything that the Shiitake should be unleashed upon him.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and I'm not gonna go. So there's a lot of like plot that happens with Thomas figures out that there's gonna be a fucking plague, and okay, he's got to race around the world and yell at service workers at the CDC
Yep.
and on the phone, and
God, this made me so uncomfortable.
Most of
all
whom are
these,
women, by the way. I
yeah,
just want to
loves
throw
to
that
do
out
that.
there. Most of these,
Women
receptionists
that
and
are
so
described
forth.
as, I mean, the lady at the CDC who, like, first of all, the CDC is like 20 minutes from closing the building, and he's demanding a meeting with somebody who's high up there. And like the lady's described, she's coated like, jowls and like just very, very
Mhm.
like negatively kind of lumpy,
Mhm.
like. And he says straight up as she says, we're gonna get you an appointment, we're gonna do what we can for you. And but he doesn't satisfy him, and he walks back to his sister to wait, and he's like, she was raised in an idiot factory. And I'm like, Jesus.
It's bad on two levels. First,
Wait,
because
did he
it's
say
mean, and
that? I
yeah.
missed that.
She was raised in an idiot factory. That's
Oh
what
my
that's what he
God.
says.
Where did you get those pants? The stupid store. Like
Ah,
it's that.
got him.
It's that
That's
kind of
that's
thing.
the thing. Like the dialogue is just so bizarre. It's
It's
so
because it's
bizarre.
Christian. It's because it's a Christian book.
Yeah,
They can't
yeah.
cuss.
I-
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
He can't call her a bitch. He can't say
Right.
fuck her.
But
So
like
they.
even then, like there's this girl like that he says, he was kind of into like early on. And what does he say? He was like, oh yeah, I dreamed of Lucy Lane last night. If only she really did have an obsession over me. That just feels like marbles in my mouth to say that. Like, I'm sorry.
Once again, why the audiobook was painful, and I'm glad I didn't do the whole thing on that, but it was a bit illustrative of like, more flaws in the writing. But yeah,
Can
go
I
for
take
it.
a sec here to talk about probably my favorite thing in this book? And by
Mm.
favorite, I mean stupidest. Like the thing that was most like, this is such a specific window into the way that this man thinks.
Please.
Is when Tom needs to prove to his sister Kara that he is in fact telling the truth about his dreams. And
Forgot.
yeah. And he's like, well, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you my beloved sister, who I definitely don't want to kiss on the mouth. And let's figure something out. And this is what happens. I'm just going to go ahead and read this here. What are you doing, stepsister? Tom asked. We're going to test these dreams of yours, and not by jumping over guardrails. You know how to test this? He hurried after her. She grabbed the newspaper and flipped through it. Why not? You claim to have gained some knowledge from this place. We'll see if you can get some more. How? Simple. You go back to sleep, get some information, and then we wake up to see if you have something we can verify. He blinked. You think that's possible? She shrugged. That's the point, to find out. You said they have histories of Earth there. You think they would have the results of sporting events? I don't know. Seems kind of trivial. History loves trivia. If there's history, it will include sporting events. She'd stopped on a sports section and glanced down on the page. Her eyes stopped and then looked over the paper at him. You know anything about horse racing? She said. No. Name me a horse that's on the racing circuit. Any horse? Any horse. Just one. I don't know any horse. Runner's luck? You're making that up. Yes. That's not the point. I'm just satisfying myself that you don't know any of the entries in today's race. Which race? The Kentucky Derby? That's running today? He reached for the paper and she pulled it back. Not a chance. You don't know the horse is racing. Let's not spoil that. She folded the paper. The race is in, she glanced at the clock on the wall, 6 hours. No one on earth knows the winner. You go and talk to your furry friends. If you come back with the name of the horse that wins, I will reconsider this little theory of yours. A slight smile lifted her small mouth.
Small, kissable, like,
Just like these nice little lips. They're not too. They're so small, but they're so kissable.
The Kentucky. Surely history will remember the 2004 Kentucky Derby.
No, this is set in the future. This is set in 2010.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so like
Something like that.
To verify it.
Okay, the 2010 Kentucky Derby.
But the best thing is that they can. This happens. He goes back and talks to the Angels, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the Kentucky Derby in 2010." that was Joy Flyer.
Not Super Saver as in our timeline, but Joy Flyer.
I need to read this too, because again, it's just so fucking
do it.
dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Tom directed the discussion back to the horse race. Please, and here he's talking to Michael, please, I just need to know if what you're saying ties directly into what I'm dreaming. It might help me put the dreams aside. Perhaps. I'm not in the business of digging up the histories. We are making our own here, and it's enough. You already have enough of the histories running through your mind to distract you and confuse even me. I will tell you on one condition. I won't ask again. Agreed. Michael frowned. Exactly. You will not ask about the histories again. And as I said, I agree. Which horse? The winner of the Kentucky Derby that year was Joy Flyer. Joy Flyer! Gabriel cried. A perfect name! He ran ahead and took flight. He gained altitude quickly, executed one loop, and winged in the direction of the gathering. Joy Flyer.
There's this really bizarre, like, effusive happiness threaded through everything that the people in this, like, Eden place do. Like, earlier in the book, like, Tom's with this, like, family that he's fallen in with, and they're eating fruit, and literally, just purely on the strength of that, they have a 10-minute laughing fit.
Yeah,
well, that's the spirit of the Lord. That's Elyon.
Clearly.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing is very strange in Eden, and that's worth noting. Because when you try to describe a heavenly world, right, you run into the problem of conflict makes a story interesting.
Mm-hmm.
If there's not conflict, what do? Now, you can't have trouble in paradise that of immoral type. You can't have, God made a mistake. Of course not. You can't do that. You can't have some twist on it. You can't do good place or anything like that. That's not permissible. In this case, you really can't even do You really can't even do what C.S. Lewis was able to make fairly interesting in Great Divorce, which was have characters who are making an active choice between hell and heaven, weighing the pros and cons. That's I sound like a C.S. Lewis fan on this episode. Y'all heard the episode. I swear to God, I'm not. But like I do like some of the stuff he did works. And I'm saying you don't have that though. You just have people who sing a lot and they dance a lot. And sure, but when you put that in novel form, it they sound psychotic. They sound like they're in a cult, you
I'm
know,
glad
and you
you
can
brought that up. Like, because he actually does glance at it a little bit, like late in the book when they're thinking about, like, because the big thing is, okay, like there's the good forest, there's the bad forest, and nobody can go into the bad forest because like they'll get eaten by bats or whatever. But the village leader, Tanis, who's like the oldest guy in the village or whatever,
I could
but
fix them, by the way.
yeah, you could. You could get him not to cross that 5 times described bridge. You could
Uh-huh.
describe it a 6th time, and that would stick to make him stay on this fucking side. But
Mhm.
no, so like there's a bit where like he has this idea to go down the river in a boat and like scout it out that way. And the boat like sinks or whatever. And Tom asks, oh well, if the plan didn't work, if we do this other plan and it didn't work, like would you have been like unhappy? And he's like, no, it just is. It didn't work, and then just something else would be just relentlessly optimistic. Like they don't even comprehend being unhappy with the way that things have played out. And
And
that's
if that
interesting to me, but they don't engage with it.
Right.
and if that led to some kind of collision, or they had to deal with unhappiness prior to the fall because of something Tom introduced.
Well,
Ah.
but this again is the limitation of trying to create such a strict biblical analog. Like,
Right.
you can't do both. You can't have it be an analog to the Garden of Eden and have it be dramatically interesting, because the entire point of the Garden of Eden is the fall. And there isn't really much interesting going on before the fall. And that's the point. Everything's
Yes.
great.
The only thing to me that really gets my attention, in a way that is besides, the sort of extra textual horror at the whole Rochelle situation in the colored forest, as they call it, is Elyon, who is what they call
Yeah.
God. And he manifests in many forms, lion, lamb, child, all that, same as in our world. And
Elyon? Oh, you, pal. That's not anything. You just, I tried.
L off. I don't know. L Yoff.
There, yeah, that's right.
Well,
Elyon.
if he's
I'd
far
rather El Yoff, if you
if
know
he's
what
far
I'm
away.
talking about.
If he's far away, he's El Yon. If he's over
Yeah.
here, he's El Hither.
There, okay, perfect. Love it.
Jesus.
You salvaged the bit. Let's go.
Mhm. He exists, everywhere, but there's a pool that he's primarily situated in.
Yeah.
And this is a little later in the book, but I really think, and I also don't think it matters that much, because, like, again, I'm not going chapter by chapter here. It's not happening.
Oh, you know who else has a pool, by the way? The eyes of Rochelle, according to the text. I just found another quote. She looked at him unabashed. For a few long seconds, all motion seemed to cease. Her eyes shone a rich jade, like a pool of water. She was fully grown, and yet slender. Early 20s. Her skin was bronzed and milky smooth.
You love to be bronzed.
I love drinking bronze milk at the beginning of the day.
I think he's trying to do a Song of Solomon thing there, and he's not quite hitting it.
With his daughter!
Yes. With his
Blow upon her garden
Bro.
that her spices may flow out.
bro, think he lot. I'm telling you.
Damn,
Am I right?
girl, those things looking juicy as pomegranates, know what I'm saying?
Thy navel, a lot like a wine cup I'd like to sip from. I think it's something along those lines. And
Yeah.
Song of Solomon, haven't brushed up on that one in a while.
I'm always
Solomon do be
brushing
doing a
up.
lot of.
I'm brushing. Yeah, right? I'm
Yep.
always
Fun
Fun
brushing
fact, I literally
up.
got the talk because I asked my dad what the Song of Solomon was about. But all that to say, Thomas dives into the pool after, he's been doubting, he's been whatever,
Yeah.
because he is doubting Thomas, even though that
Right.
doesn't really work, but sure. That's got to be something, or maybe not, who
Well, it's
knows?
what you say about the repetition, right? And I'm not going to belabor this, but like it just makes him seem very malleable, right? He
Mhm.
believes the last
Mm-hmm.
thing that somebody told him, he believes, you know?
That's true.
Like he goes into a conversation with the Satan figure, Tila, the giant bat dude, right? And he's like, okay, I know he's the great deceiver, so like if he says something, I'll just roll with it, so I'll
Right.
deceive the deceiver.
Good point.
But then he's
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, maybe I did come here on a spaceship and I'm not of this
Wait a
world.
minute.
It's
What if
just,
what if this great deceiver is telling the truth?
Mm.
that'd be a twist.
It really makes you think. And I think that there's also a piece of this that it's just that's how the narrative is. Also, it's not just Thomas as a character. The narrative itself seems to lack object permanence.
Hmm. Yeah, no, and you can feel Ted being like, wait, I know I had another thing in here.
Yeah.
Spaceship. And whatnot. Um, but he encounters Elion after having this moment of doubt that Lenore actually just directly referred to. And he gets taken to the pool, Elion's pool, and it says Tom tore his feet from the sand and sprinted to the water's edge. No one told him to do this, by the way. He didn't stop the shore and stoop to drink. Instead, he dived headlong over the bent posture of Michael and into the glowing water, screaming all the way. The instant Tom hit the water, his body shook violently. A blue strobe exploded in his eyes, and he knew he was going to die, that he had entered a forbidden pool, pulled by the wrong desire, and now he would pay with his life. The warm water engulfed him. Flutters rippled through his body and erupted into a boiling heat that knocked the wind from his lungs. The shock alone might kill him, but he didn't die. In fact, it was pleasure that racked his body, not death. Pleasure. The sensations coursed through his bones in great unrelenting waves. Elyon. How he was certain he did not know, but he knew. Elyon was in this lake with him. And this goes on for a really, really long time. It talks about him wanting to drink. It talks about
Yeah.
him, and it has
Elion
him.
starts like singing to him. He's like, "I love you, Thomas."
In one bit, it says Tom shrieked with laughter. He tumbled. He cried with pleasure and swam deeper. A giggle rippled through the water. Um, the words started in his mind and burned his body like a spreading fire. And what you have here is something that's approaching competent eldritch horror territory.
Yeah,
Not
but it's
quite.
supposed to be good. Like it's
Yes,
it's like this is the best thing that's ever happened.
right.
This is if
Exactly.
Yogg-Sothoth loves you.
Yeah.
It's and it goes on and on and on. I'm not going to read the whole thing because this goes on pages and pages, and there's other scenes like it. But it's fucking horrifying. It's him cackling and screaming and singing, and it's yeah, it's supposed to be awesome and
Well,
good and desirable.
it's definitely trying to just bring about that feeling of, I don't know, holy ecstasy or whatever that you
Sure.
experience in charismatic churches. That's kind of what they're
Mhm.
going for here. It's like
Mhm.
bro's gone full Pentecostal. He's speaking in tongues. He's rolling in the aisles. He's saying Elion. It's a classic situation.
Yeah, it's just, when you run up against it, it's just, especially in a fantasy world, when you run into a fantasy world, one thing I think I was talking to Lenore about this, is when you write Christian fiction set in our world, people with a preconceived notion of Christianity are going to bring their Christian rules into it. If you had the scene in a Pentecostal church, someone might find it weird or not, but they'd be like, that's how Pentecostals are. When you then remove it to a fantasy world, when you make it allegory or whatever, you kind of reset. You got to answer the question again. Why isn't God intervening about the Black Forest?
Yes.
You got to
Yes.
answer
Mhm.
all these things again, and you don't automatically translate whatever answer the reader already had in their head in this other thing. And that is one of the fundamental, really big problems in this type of world building when you want to make this perfect Christian fiction that does not violate, the laws of God.
Yeah, this was honestly like you have just distilled, I think, the single biggest problem that I have with
Mhm.
this book, other than the daughter stuff, obviously, which
Sure.
is like you there is a level of originality that is required when you're building a fantasy world. You have to put the pieces into place. Instead, what he has done is he has written something that is honestly only going to be super intelligible to Christians, which makes some sense. That's his target audience. But you're not going to be able to write something that mirrors that narrative in a way that comes close to like topping the original. And if you're so slavishly devoted to repeating the beat, like every single beat, which he does, and it sounds like he keeps doing in the other books, why would you not just read the fucking Bible? Why or adapt the biblical narrative into something that is more immediately accessible, I guess. Instead, it's just like I just found this stuff to be so fucking tedious.
Yeah.
Because it wraps around to, you know, something that is, you know, so the conclusion that you would come to were you in that community, right? You know, why doesn't he just destroy the Shitaiki? Because evil provides his creation with a choice, the child says, though the concept was very simple indeed. And because without it, there could be no love. Love, Tom stopped. The boy's hand slipped out of his. He turned, brow raised. Love is dependent on evil, Tom asked. Did I say that? A mischievous glance filled the boy's eyes. How can there be love without a true choice? Would you suggest that man be stripped of the capacity to love? This was the great romance. To love at any cost.
But also, what the fuck is this? This is like a really shitty Socratic dialogue that is just stopping the narrative momentum dead cold.
Anger leads to like, yeah, he's doing like a Yoda type, like what's happening, you know?
But it doesn't tie into the narrative. It's just another attempt to turn you, the reader, into a Christian, even though statistically you already are one of those because you're reading this fucking book.
Obviously, with the exception of Josh, who was converted by this book.
That's right.
But like that's you know, was actually the parts in the real world that happened were so powerful when they went against the raison strain.
Yeah. No, it was when that brick
Dribbled.
You knew the power of the Lord.
Yes, the raison strain named for we haven't even met Monique yet.
I don't care. But yeah,
she's the French baddie. She's like
baddie. That's true.
She's the French baddie. She's the heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. She's French. She grew up in the south of France, and she's sort of one of those international jet setters. And she also parallels Rochelle.
Sort
where
of,
like there's something going on where
Rochelle.
No.
Absolutely. So there's sort of this thing going on where in the real world, who can say what is real? They're both real. He'll say something to Monique, right? Or Monique will say something to him, and then he takes that information, he goes into the fucking Elion's dimension, and then he will talk to Rochelle, and she'll basically give him what is like a clue for a puzzle game, and then he has to return to the prime narrative and figure out what that clue actually means. And again, maybe it's just because I've been playing a lot of Riven lately, but I was like, I actually think this would work better as a video game.
Yeah.
I thought of you did an episode on it as well. I thought of Day of the Tentacle. Like it's a point and click or some shit.
Chrono Trigger. Yeah. Like there's exactly. These puzzles would be a lot more fun to solve if you, the player, were able to do it.
Just type in drink water and the game immediately ends.
This was the same time when this was coming out, maybe a little later than this. I was out there playing Flash games on VeggieTales website. There was an audience. It was kids looking for those Christian games that weren't there, and I was stuck just controlling Larry Boy with keypad. I could have been doing this. And they fumbled it.
The problem is this game would have an M rating.
Yes, it would be so dark. So yeah,
and nudity maybe.
Question mark. Yeah. The raison strain is the whole virus thing, and honestly, like the stuff in the real world feels like it's going somewhere, and then it doesn't because this is the first book in a series. It really doesn't. The magic world, the Eden world, does kind of have a complete arc. You know, you can tell there's going to be more, but you have Eden, you have the fall, you have the new covenant with God. Okay, that's an arc. You have basically almost like the arc of the covenant. I don't know. I didn't mean to do that, but
and it takes 3 days, notably.
Right. But in the human world, because it's just one story, it's a story of the virus leading up to the Great Tribulation. You don't do much except, Thomas is eventually convincing more and more people. In the process of doing this, he actually leaks information about the virus that leads to setting the events in motion in the
he blew
first
it.
place. Yeah, he
Mhm.
fucks it up. Thomas fucks up a lot of things. If Thomas did not exist, a lot of things just wouldn't, like, presumably the Eden world would have been fine because he wouldn't have set everybody to thinking, and the raison string wouldn't have broken out. It would have been, mostly normal. And it doesn't really interrogate that too much. But Thomas in the real world is running around trying to get people to pay attention to him. He's getting stronger with the abilities he's learning in the Eden world where everyone's superhuman. And eventually meets and kidnaps Monique de Raison, the genius they talked about. She's French, but she says she doesn't live in France because she doesn't agree with the politics.
Yes.
This was interesting to me because, like, the president of France at the time is Jacques Chirac, right? And the big rift between France and the United States, as we touched on earlier,
Freedom
it's
fries, motherfuckers.
exactly, it's France not supporting, it's not being it's not being in the coalition of the willing that invaded and despoiled Iraq.
Right.
So what does
Yeah,
that
they were
leave us
contractually bound by their obligations to NATO to go into Afghanistan, but when the time came around to Iraq, they didn't fucking do it.
Exactly. So, I mean, where does this leave us? Where does this leave us thinking about the raisons? Exactly. Are they pro-war?
Probably. I mean, they're billionaires, and they sell.
Also, like, what is the point of that line? What is the function there? Is it I'm not like the other girls? Like, genuinely, what's going on there?
I don't know if he's like worried his audience hates France, but I don't know unless there was. I feel like it can't just be the like Iraq thing. I feel like was there another thing happening? Unless he expected it to go somewhere? Is it an inside joke?
If you're from France and you no longer live there, you're living in fucking Monaco or something, right? Like it's not.
The thing is, France repeatedly is the bad guy because there is later a French diplomat who's working for the Antichrist, and later the French government is beholden to the Antichrist in later books. So I mean, he has a real hatred for France, along with Russia and China. But those are like the obvious ones that he would pick to not like. France is an interesting one to pull out. And I couldn't tell you why.
There's a weird murkiness, right, to their relationship to global politics that does violence, I think, to the time and place, especially for a book that is so deeply rooted in it being 2010.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, basically the whole thing with Monique de Raison, he's trying to convince her. He manages to convince her, but then she gets kidnapped again by this Carlos figure.
No.
There's a whole fight.
That vile Cypriot himself,
Yeah,
Carlos.
Probably the scariest guy. It's maybe a meme I've only seen, but it's like Alfred edited saying Bane is the scariest guy I've ever seen in my. It's like, yeah, Carlos is the scariest guy I've ever seen. But and speaking of, I just had to get this Carlos quote in, because Ted wants him to be cool so much.
Well, he is cool. He's probably the coolest guy in the book.
He's so cool.
Yeah.
If your enemy is strong, you must crush. If your enemy is deaf, you must shout.
That doesn't make sense.
Sorry, I haven't even been able to finish the quote. It's not done yet. God damn it. If your enemy fears death, you must slaughter.
Okay.
Basic terror camp doctrine.
Absolutely, man.
I couldn't. If your enemy is deaf, you must shout.
I mean, that's my very first day at like fucking Al Qaeda boot camp. That was the first thing they told me, was that axiomatic expression.
What if Carlos was like kicked out and they just told him that and they're like, you're actually really good. Go into the world, Carlos. Because they didn't want him around.
This is Carlos. We've deliberately trained him to shout at deaf people as a joke.
Like, if he's afraid of dying, you have to kill him. It's like, well, weren't you going to kill him anyway? Like,
right.
I don't. Or like, if your enemy is strong, you must crush him. Like, were you planning on?
Oh my God! Wait, Ryan just put into chat one of the best pieces of fan art I've seen in a minute.
This is fucking good.
We've got these are the bats, the good bats, the furries. On the left we've got Gable. On the right we've got Michael. Gable is saying, "How romantic," and he's smiling and he's sort of throwing his arms up in the air with glee. Michael, on the other hand, has sort of a nonplussed, frustrated maybe expression on his face. He's extending a wing, pointing toward Gable and saying he thinks everything is romantic. Which, isn't that just the vibe with these two?
It's funny because Michael then will go on to say, I think he wishes he were a human, maybe even a human woman, and Gable doesn't deny it. So, trans Gable confirmed.
I noticed that too.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
he could be a
was
man, he
that?
could be a woman. Like, there's
That
like a
was
gender
st-
fluidity thing going
That was so
on.
weird. Like these very weird specific moments where it was like, yeah, I could be a human. It could be a man. It could be a woman. Could maybe be a woman. It's like, and then it's just done. That part is done. It's
Exactly.
over.
They don't lean into it at all. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, there's just this very like late 90s Warner Brothers animation vibe about these two. One's the straight man, one's the like serious one. Like,
Yeah, it's Pinky in the Brain, right?
it's the dragons from Quest for Camelot, whatever.
Kind of had like a Josh Gad voice in my head for Gable.
Which I guess means that Michael is voiced by Andrew Rannells, if you want to go down that road.
So good. So yeah, let's kind of get into the disaster that will befall this world. Like I said,
No, I love it too much. It
Oh.
can't be spoiled.
and Elyon loves it too, and that's why he's gonna destroy it.
Fuck.
You have you have the fact of the matter is Tanis, the guy that I can fix, it describes he's got, his cloak falls to mid brown thigh, he's muscled. I like it. I'm with
no,
it.
he's like a fucking jacked and stacked kind of guy.
Yeah, he's cool. He wants to be able to fight the bats because he's like, they're over there. They can't come over here because obviously
Right.
power of Elyon, but like as long as they're over there, they're going to be a temptation. And it doesn't say this explicitly, but my reading is, hey, right now there's 1 million people. We're going to keep growing. At some point, somebody's going to get tempted by these motherfuckers. Because I think the rule is that just one person has to drink it to ruin it. It happens in this book to be the firstborn, but it seems like anybody could drink it and ruin it for everybody.
Which again is where the connection to the Garden of Eden becomes very strange. Because the whole point of the Garden of Eden story is that it was the first guy, and he was the only guy, actually.
Right, and that's the sin of everybody, and you're born with that sin. Yeah,
Right.
But they're not in this case.
Yeah,
they were born of perfection.
It's 1 million people, and all it takes is one supreme jackass to fuck it up for the rest of them.
Which is why Tanis's logic is potentially sound in that if they had, wiped the Shiitake, maybe they could have avoided this. But he starts to sort of poke around. Thomas is poking around there to try and figure out this like two worlds things. There's a random subplot where Tila, the devil, lies. It says there's a spaceship.
Oh yeah,
there's
Bill
not a
shows
spaceship.
up again, but he's also an illusion.
Yeah, there's a spaceship illusion. Colored wood drives away bats. Like it's
Except it doesn't?
not if you put it down.
Fuck.
I hate that. I like that he puts down the colored wood to close a door. That is really funny to me. He's like, fuck, I forgot. I shouldn't have closed the door.
Yeah, no, I'm always setting down my colorful wood. It's
yeah, that's how it goes.
There are these immediate like turns in the logic, like when the fall has happened and they're being chased by bats. Like she spun and hurled her fruit at the swarm. They scattered like flies. Rachel flew by him, then Johann, but the bats had reorganized and were coming again. Johann clutched their last fruit between his fingers. They shouldn't have thrown the fruit.
Classic mistake. That's another question that I had. The fruit. This is, I think, an analog to the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but it's kind of not because it's the water that you're not allowed to drink. So what's going on here?
It's just another thing. It's another mechanic.
Okay.
I think
Again,
he's...
it's a video game. Like this is
Literally.
a health pickup.
Yes,
Why?
yes. And there's multiple types of fruit. Like one of them like prevents you from dreaming. Like one of them heals you. One of them like makes you want to drink water, I guess.
And in the Dark Forest, they give you powers, but with a negative thing. Like they give you the power to influence the Shiitake, but they make you more susceptible to the darkness.
That's
that kind of
saying.
thing. There's something here
for a good game. I really think so. It would be fucking weird and dumb, but it would probably be fun.
Give it a shot. If you can go back in time like Tom did.
there's a big Ted Dekker shaped hole in steam green light, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's true. It's right there. But uh yeah, so Tanis is gonna get eventually he's gonna get swung over by Tila, who is I mean, there is just such a long and I listened to this part,
Mm.
such a long debate between Tanis and Tila, and he's long. He's
Oh,
like,
it's
and
so
knowledge is
long.
truth, and since I tricked you,
It's these fucking
that's
Socratic
truth.
dialogues again.
Mhm.
That as I said before, they stop the narrative dead cold because he's trying to make a point, and it
Mhm.
doesn't work.
And that's not the temptation of Eden. The temptation of Eden is wanting to be like God.
Right.
That's the thing. Tanis never wants to really be like God. Tanis is trying to have this power to fight the demons. It just doesn't. It's not equating. So he's not
No.
actually doing his evangelism very well. It's very
Nobody,
frustrating to me.
Nobody in the world wants to be like God.
Mhm.
Everybody's pretty happy with the overall Elyon situation. They're
Mhm.
just like, hey, it's kind of weird that there's this huge black forest full of guys who hate us and want us to die. Maybe we should do something about it.
And they can presumably kill you, even though there's no death. Not clear on that one.
Well, only
But-
if you don't get to the healing water.
Good point.
Gameplay mechanic. That's that.
Once again, yes. Tanis drinks the water and it fucks everything up.
Tom has been crucified by this time.
Oh shit, that's a good point. That
Yeah.
scene was metal. I liked that a lot.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, we could talk about that. Yeah,
I would
yeah,
love to because I actually think
apologies. Yes.
I think that's one of the weirdest and most interesting scenes in the book, frankly, and some of the best violence is when
Yeah.
Tom gets crucified.
Yeah, no, like it's because it's him. He's gone among the bats to try and get to the bottom of this mystery because Tila's like, look, just let me show you the spaceship and then like we'll talk, right?
That's right.
Because I'm your only source of information about the histories, right? About the real world, right?
That's
So
right.
just do this thing for me and like we'll work this out. And he goes, he sees a spaceship, sure enough, but then he looks away and he looks back and the spaceship is gone
Right.
and now there are bats chasing him. Now he's been captured, Tom has.
That's right. They
And
knock him the fuck out.
Mhm, mhm.
So basically, Tom sees Tila's final form, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
This was Tila. He'd changed. His skin was pitch black and cracked, oozing a clear fluid. His wings were flaking, shedding long swaths of fur. Lips peeled back to reveal crusted yellow fangs. A fly slowly crawled over one of his eyes, red now, but the beast didn't appear to notice.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mhm.
Tom rolled his head from left to right. The device on which they had hung him creaked with his movement. He was bound to a crude wooden beam planted upright with a similar beam fixed perpendicular. A cross. They had bound him to the cross with twine. Streaks of blood ran from a dozen gashes on his chest. And then, just sort of skipping forward a little bit, then they bring out a second cross, and that's got Bill on it, the other guy who may or may not exist. The man's naked body sagged, battered almost beyond recognition. Wide swaths of flesh had been stripped from his torso. Tom groaned at the sight. Lovely, isn't it? The beast sneered. He giggled in delight. You do remember this one, don't you? Bill. But wasn't Bill just a figment of his imagination? He was right here, bleeding in front of him. Real. I know what you're thinking, Tila said. You're thinking that the spaceship isn't real, and so Bill isn't real, but you're wrong on both counts. And then here's the fucking money description. Bill's blood-stained body moved ever so slowly on the cross. The poor soul's hands had been nailed to the horizontal member of the wooden cross, not tied as Thomas's had been. A large spike also jutted from a deep wound in his feet. His eyes had swollen shut, leaving only thin lines. His upper lip had been split open. A tangled mat of red hair fell to the man's shoulder. Tom closed his eyes and trembled in horror. That's pretty good writing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, it works once he gets into the gore, and then has a whole thing where Tila says, kill him with the fucking sword, and I'll let you
Yeah.
go. Like, It's a scene and then there's the shrieking bats and Tom pulls out a secret dagger. That is a moment that works. I'd almost forgotten about it, but it's a moment in the middle that is if a little by the numbers. It's in
Yeah.
with the demons and stuff, the cross and all that. It's especially interesting because the cross is not an image in that earth, and it never
Right.
becomes one. There is a Jesus character who shows up later, and he does not die by crucifixion. He dies by a sword.
Well, and
So
I think it's pretty
interesting.
ballsy too for a Christian author to put a
Mm,
crucifixion scene in the book that is
sure.
not Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's really something, I think.
hmm In fact, of like a guy that may or may not exist, it's a weird thing to do. I fuck with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like it's again, it is let down by everything that surrounds it because like it's Tom can never just make a fucking decision because Bill has already been bleeding in front of him once. The first time he's
Mhm.
gone out to talk to Tila and have a Socratic fucking discussion with him. Like Bill staggers out of the woods and he's like, "No, don't. He's lying to you." But so he's already been bleeding in front of him once. Why is that the criteria for him being real now? Like it's just so
It's and yeah, it's and you're right, and it has the same Socratic thing but there are moments with Tila that work. I think Tila is interesting. I think both of
totally.
his forms are pretty cool. Obviously, like the clear liquid, the fly, that's a cool description. And you also have
Both
him flashing, colorful, and all
both
that.
of his forms. That
Well, he
implies
is.
there's only two. Because I remember way back in the prologue, and maybe you can clarify this for me. Valborg Svensson is described as being like very bat-like in
Mm.
color,
Oh,
in like clothing. Like,
I
is there?
forget if he's supposed to be Tila or not.
Or
I
is it
don't
is
think so.
no, it's not sort of like the situation with Rochelle and Monique where they're like the
I
same
think
but
it's
on
more
either side of the
that.
barrier.
I think it's more that, and he's not like literal Satan though, and
Sure.
there is also a literal Satan.
Well, and
Oh, there
like
is.
Josh, the Rochelle Monique parallel you bring up, if that's the case, and like he's setting up in the very, very beginning that okay, there's echoes between these worlds that he can kind of divine some sort of pattern from, that I actually like, because
Hmm.
it lends a little bit more tightness to the narrative.
hmm
Yeah, it's one of a number of concepts in this book that could be really, really interesting if executed well.
hmm And it's one of a lot of things that are kind of stuffed in, as well as that, as well as a weird and we haven't talked much about the real world, but there's just kind of stuff happening. There's
Yeah, shit
missions
happens.
and
Yeah.
and there's a deputy director defense guy who's like skeptical about vaccines because his daughter died of an HIV
That's right.
vaccine. Um, and
Also, isn't the
he's a
Raison
thing.
virus an attempt at an AIDS vaccine?
It's AIDS and SARS and a few other things, which is interesting.
It's an
Um,
everything vaccine, and
it's an
like
everything vaccine.
and
X, the everything vaccine. Got it.
It's
Well,
happening.
but this is weird to me though, because like it mentions briefly, like Blinken will miss it in chapter 18 or thereabouts, but like it says, oh, like the vaccine like rewrites your DNA so that you're immune to this, that, and the other. So Dekker like has in a weird way predicted how people incorrectly think mRNA vaccines work.
Hmm.
Like there's a lot of like obviously unintentional COVID parallels that I can't help but see in this age.
Well, this is another area too where I think the comparison to Michael Crichton is interesting,
hmm
where Dekker here is trying to sort of be contemporary and at the bleeding edge of technology,
Mm.
but he doesn't understand the first thing about what the technology actually is and doesn't seem to have much of an interest in trying to find out.
Like, yeah, we have this render model that's the newest, like where he's talking about the model to figure out what the virus will do, things like that. He's not that fascinated in it, which is fine, but once again, he's throwing concepts out.
Right.
So he's the one who's doing it. He's the one who's talking about how many base strand pairs there are in the
Yeah.
vaccine. I didn't
Yeah.
ask him to put that in the book. He did. So why doesn't he care about it?
Well,
Uh,
on the subject of being like into technology and like an early adopter of things, I love that Yahoo is spelled with an exclamation point when it brings up.
that is good.
Well,
That
that's
is good.
brand. That's just on brand. Is all that.
Yes.
That's brand approved.
You got to do it
Formatting.
correctly. You
Yeah.
got to do it correctly. But and I don't have a lot to say about the real world stuff because it doesn't. Here's the thing. I'll just go ahead and say the real world stuff does not reach any definitive conclusion, and basically what will happen in the real world over the next several books is I'm not kidding. It will just drag out over the next 2 days, basically, for the rest of the book. You finally get to the point where the demands are made and militaries start turning over their nuclear arsenals to get their whatever. The U.S. turns over its entire navy and nuclear arsenal to France. The UK, the UK and Israel have to destroy the American navy, which is laughable. even no matter who's running the ship, it's a really laughable description. Yeah, the UK and Israel are totally taking down our carriers, 100%. And then it turns out that because he's been in the other world and he's been in the water of Elion, that Thomas's blood is the cure. And
Okay.
and they have to take all of his blood to have enough cure for everyone in the world. So he has to die.
So there's another sacrifice here.
Yeah, and it's Thomas, and he's kind of Jesus.
Thomas is
sort of.
Jesus. Yeah, but also not.
But not at all. But he gives all his blood, but then it doesn't matter because he still has the rest of his life in the other world.
And I don't think I would have a
sucks.
problem with any of that. Well, I mean, it does suck, but like I would have a problem with this because it's bad. But like, as regards the idea of trying to craft something narratively using themes, this
Sure.
is to me the fundamental tension with all evangelical Christian media.
Mhm.
You can't really tell a story
Mhm.
if you want to have the point of the media be Jesus is really great.
Mhm.
Because you always have to come back to an narrative that on some level you can't make changes to because it's, not the thing anymore. And I found so many times in this book, I was like, why are you making these choices? Because Ted, I feel like on some level, Ted, I'm talking to you right now as you listen to this. First of all, weird shit about your daughter. Don't do that, man. But second thing, I feel like you had a different book in you.
Mhm.
And there are pieces of the world building here that indicate and point to something completely different from what we got, where you want to really flesh out and explore a completely original world, but you're so shackled to this narrative that pulls through in everything because of the evangelical Christianity of it all.
It's the
And,
tyranny, it's the tyranny of the reboot. Batman
Yeah.
always has to have his parents die. Superman always has to have his planet blow up. No matter.
And Jesus has always got a Jesus.
Right.
It's why we were listening to this book on the way here, and Sydney, my husband, made the point that it's like a lot of really good religious media comes from people who are not as devoted to that religion as the people who are, telling the story. Maybe they have an alternate view. Maybe they are part of the religion in a different way, or maybe they left it, but that's actually usually the best stories.
Well, and I think that's because as regards religious narratives in general, in art, in media, the thing that makes it interesting is not the story itself. You have the Bible for that, right?
Mhm.
What makes it interesting is the way that people grapple with their lived experiences, their worlds, and how those experiences connect them to the broader, idea of the narrative that's been placed in them by the faith and what keeps them going in terms of their own faith. That's a reliably interesting, gold mine to draw from in terms of real drama. This, on the other hand, just isn't fucking it.
Ted Dekker also has a second problem that gives him real issue, and it's in an interview. He gave several interviews where he said this, but the most illustrative one is in his Goodreads interview, where he said he feels like he's messed up if he does not write at least 2,000 words a day.
Okay.
And he is obsessively, he's got to write at least 2,000 words a day. And on a day where when he's mid-novel, he goes away by himself for a week and writes more like 5,000 to 6,000 words a day. And he says he listens to music that's loud. He says one of his favorites is the Tron soundtrack.
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
Which, yeah, good decision.
A man of taste.
He says he drinks a lot of coffee, and he says he's gotta write. He's got to write as much as he possibly can, which is, a way of doing things if you want to heavily edit or whatever. But in a space like the evangelical space, especially once you have a few successful books under you, which Ted did at this time, it's kind of like, yeah, they're gonna buy that shit.
Yeah,
man.
this doesn't feel edited to me.
Yeah,
at all.
not heavily. Certainly not
Yeah.
heavily. And he doesn't mention editing at all in that interview. And they're talking about what's your process.
Mm.
And even if I mean, I'm sure somebody looked it over. The fact that in the word editing doesn't come up when he's asked what's your process is telling, but obviously your point about the overall narrative, that's the one side that makes it universal to all evangelical media, and this is the other side that makes it very Ted. What makes Ted Ted?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very strange relationship to the concept of faith. When you have a guy literally encountering this ineffable like entity that loves him, that literally exists. That's the half of I think the essence of Ted, and the other half is that, look, editing problems aside, I don't think this particular line would have survived the editing process. And that line is, "I'm fine," he said, but he wasn't fine.
Yeah.
Damn.
It-
Sometimes it's the clowns who cry the most.
in my notes I have here, I've found it, my least favorite sentence in the book.
Well, the thing is, Lenore, you've never been there. If you had been there, if you had said you were fine and not been fine,
Ooh.
like me,
Yeah.
then I actually had to just sit with that
It
because
was,
Ted saw me.
it's very of its time, like I'm Not Okay by My Chemical Romance had just released that same year.
Yeah.
Maybe he introduced that with Tron, but
I think there's two other things that I wanted to mention here, sort of as we toward that are more, I guess,
yes,
sort of more toward the end.
yes, definitely.
Just a little bit about sort of the way that Ted writes about women, I think is interesting.
Uh-huh.
Did you guys like the part where Carlos shoved a grenade down Monique's throat?
Oh
Whew.
dear.
Yeah, there was that.
I'm gonna read this. You ready? This is kinky. He pulled the woman to a sitting position, squeezed her cheeks to part her lips, and slipped the ball into her mouth. Using his left hand, he squeezed her windpipe with enough sudden force to make her gasp involuntarily. At the same moment, while her mouth gaped, oh my God, he shoved the ball down her throat with his forefinger. She gagged, swallowed. He clamped his hand over her mouth and she struggled against him, regaining consciousness. When he was sure she'd swallowed the ball completely, he brought his fist against her temple. She slumped to the floor.
Steady on, Ted.
Like, what? That's kinky, man.
Carlos.
That's something.
And
That's-
she's already, to be clear, readers, our listeners, I guess, she's tied up already in
Right.
this scene. She's
Yeah.
already bound.
Tom tied her up. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom tied her up, and he's, by the way, shirtless, sleeping on the bed next to
That's
her.
right. Well, Carlos shoves this proximity grenade, remote triggered proximity grenade, down her throat.
That he's killed 3 people with in the past. It says. Not that specific grenade, but that's.
I was about to say, he put it back together? Like,
It would be cool if it was the same one. I'd fuck with that, but no. But yeah, wild. There's and there it is, a recurring thing of like I mean, and obviously it's kinky, but also there's just like the damsel thing is in this heavy. I mean, it's even part of the great romance process. They're like, you got to save the maiden or whatever, which is interesting because they have no conflict in Eden.
That is weird to me. Yeah.
Well, until the fall, at which point Rochelle becomes like a big old bitch who's
She's
just
so annoying.
not willing to go along
Exactly.
with anything, and starts questioning Tom about his intentions. He starts hearing about Monique, which again is like in the other world, and he's
That
like,
annoyed the hell out of me.
and
It was
she's
too
like,
many
Oh,
times.
God.
"Oh, Monique, huh? Right. Great. I guess I'll just hang out over here." And then she like goes and gets all sullen, and then he has to console her.
She and the little child that they're with behave the exact same way. In fact, the child is slightly better because he does like sing once to like bring spirits up.
Does Ted Dekker have a second kid?
I think
He has
4
4
kids.
kids.
Interesting.
I'm not sure the other ones' names. I saw Rochelle Dekker because I saw that she was a writer. And yeah,
I wonder if one of them is named Johann.
Johann. Don't know.
But I do think also that excerpt there, that's a wild fucking thing to have in a Christian book, first
Yeah.
of all.
Uh-huh.
But secondly, that's also really pretty good writing. I can't say I'm a fan of like what's going on broadly. But there is real craft and specificity here that is lacking elsewhere.
Yeah,
There were
yeah, no, he's
moments,
very
yeah.
aware of how you have to manipulate a human body to get swallow a proximity mine.
Yeah.
How do you think he got 4 kids? Yeah, no.
So wait, like while his wife is pregnant, like he can't leave her or she'll explode.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's unclear. He did move out to Colorado for a while, but they were just out in the mountains. But he has that, like, he will have these moments where he shows competency. Usually it's during some kind of combat, not even combat necessarily, like a big combat scene, but like a little moment of like a little exchange, something
Mhm.
along those lines. One way he'll describe a shot, one way he'll do something like that. It is interesting, he's not a complete he's not like the most hack person we've read on this podcast by any
Right.
stretch of the imagination. I mean, we read Ben Shapiro's novel, for God's sake, but like,
Yeah.
there's moments of craft, but it is weird where the craft comes out, especially considering he's, evangelical.
Which I guess is the thing, right? It's like, so maybe Ted's a bit of a sicko, and I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, lean into it.
But it edges up against evangelicalism in such a
Right.
strange way.
It does edge, yes.
And he,
Come on.
God damn it. and he's, and on the same vein, Josh, and he's too committed to his evangelicalism to violate it, right? If he was a more, I believe in God, but, may let some of the details fall where they may, my own lived experience type
Right.
guy, then he could still make this interesting. He could work in the Christian themes. He could still be like, Jesus is a cool dude in his books.
Yeah.
But
Or
he
maybe
can't.
maybe not even write something Christian at all. Maybe he just writes some really fucked up horror.
Yeah.
I would read that. I think it might be actually good.
And that was what made him fall in love with reading and writing, was like The Stand and books like that, like not Christian books, according to him. So like it's fascinating how this is I guess where he feels like he needs to be or has to be, and it's a shame that that's the limitations that are on him, But kind of coming to the end of the plot, like we were saying, world ends, everything's destroyed, very sad, and it's just now
Tom gets some kisses in with Rochelle. Just need to throw that out there.
Mhm.
they do kiss, and then Tom and Rochelle and her little bitch brother, whatever his name is, Johan,
That kid
he
sucks, man.
Yeah, he
He's the worst.
sings. That's like his thing. Okay,
yeah.
sure. That's nice, I guess.
He sings the song of Elyon.
They sing a lot. They sing a lot, and they scream a lot, and they laugh a lot in these books. There's a lot of outpouring of emotion. And they go on a journey across the desert, and eventually find, led by Elyon, because Elyon gives them one last moment of grace, even though, I mean, they weren't the ones who drank the water, but whatever, to the forest that's not quite as good as the old forest, but it can be a safe haven. And if they wash themselves in the water of Elyon once a day, they won't turn into orcs.
And
Basically.
there's 6 other rules that they don't elaborate on, but just they're there.
Yeah, it's like a 10 Commandments type thing.
Mhm.
Ted Dekker figured he could fix the 10 Commandments, make them more efficient.
Like we could like mash up like coveting and also like like not killing. Like they could just be
Why
one.
would you steal if you weren't coveting in the first place? Right.
Yeah, come on.
But yeah, that and that's like not that important to this book. But yes, now the new rule is if you're not washing in the water, you start converting to like this gray skin, scaly, falling
Yeah.
apart beast. I'll let you know that if you stay in that form, you get more like brutish and big and warlike. You become an orc. They call them. They don't call them orcs. They call them scabs. But they're like orcs, and they're displayed as like orc. They're like tribal. And like
That's good. That means that Ted Dekker is a confirmed comrade.
Yes, there you go.
You don't wash in the water, you go cross a picket line somewhere eventually.
That's right.
That's exactly right. Tanis becomes their leader and changes his name to something. I forget what.
Is he still hot?
No, he's whatever. There is a hot scab woman though that
Okay.
after Rochelle dies,
Rochelle dies.
oh yeah, she gets fucking
Oh,
mugged in the
no!
next book.
Mm.
He killed his daughter too.
She was such a well-realized character.
Yeah, no, she had everything. She had
Yeah.
in the last
She had
bit of
green
the book?
eyes. She
We
had
had those
brown
weird
hair.
She
we had
had
those weird
smirk.
scenes where like she's doing karate moves with Tom in the forest, and that's like their courtship.
That's right.
Yeah, against nothing. They were like, I suppose, LARPing. They bookmark 382. I marked, I'm not sure exact. Oh yeah, he's describing her. This is at the end about Rochelle. She had the spirit of an eagle and the heart of a mother. He even liked the way she argued with him, full of metal. She is the size of an
The
average human
heart
mother.
of an average human mother.
That's immediately came to mind.
So good.
The heart of a mother. Uh, he even liked how
Now
she
we're
argued with
talking.
him. Ted, you freak. Uh,
Top
But-
10 hottest female
Dekker
Circle Trilogy
characters.
characters.
there's not that many.
No.
Kara, Monique de Rizan, Rochelle. That's all, folks. Yeah.
Tanis
Kathy from the
Huntsman.
fucking like CDC.
One of the most. Wait, hold on. I'm going to do this again to get it
You got
just
this.
right. Yeah, here we go. Tanis the Huntsman, one of the greatest and most attractive characters ever thought up. He can chop wood, throw a sword around, and most importantly, he's orange colored and knows how to handle the females.
Let's go.
Is he orange colored? Oh,
It doesn't matter. It's we're playing fast and loose here.
that's right.
But yeah, I will say that yeah, for those of you who are just dying to know, there's going to be elaborate wars between the forests and because Tom is able to dream for years at a time now without going back to the earth because of a fruit that also apparently, according to Rochelle, one of her last lines in the book boosts fertility. She says it'll make you fertile, and she like smirks.
Oh, also, Tom dies at the end.
Yeah, but he's fine.
No, I
Yeah.
know he's fine. He's already gotten shot in that back of the head and survived. But like, it ends with him fucking getting shot in the head a third time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they had kind of blown their load on the first two killing
Right.
Toms, or that might have been something.
This is one short paragraph, is chapter 38. So let's bust it out here.
Yeah. This is the end.
Rachel was wrong. Thomas did not eat the fruit forever. He only ate it for 15 years.
Oh, okay.
Not once in those 15 years did he dream, but then, in the worst of times, when they didn't think it could possibly get any worse, just as the boy had foretold, Thomas dreamed again. And when he did, he dreamed that a gun was hovering by his left temple.
Oh,
3
no.
words whispered menacingly in his ear. Goodbye, Mr. Hunter. The journey continues May 2004 with Red, or now at teddekker.com.
Y'all want to know something really cool about Carlos?
Yeah.
He gets converted to Christianity.
Let's go!
That's so good.
Yeah, it's
That's
really good.
so fucking good.
Yeah.
He
Ted is
renounces the vile ways of the Mohammedans in favor of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
one and the same. And how does he get
Awesome.
convinced? By Tom figuring out how to take him into the other world.
Of course.
Because it turns out if you inject a little of Tom's blood, you can do it too. It's just his blood is the whole
Oh.
thing.
Am I alone in being extremely concerned that the church in the other world is called the Thrall?
No, it's fine.
It's normal to me, actually. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, carry on.
Yeah, that does sound like what Tila's church would be called.
Yes.
But no, Tila doesn't have a church. Tila's more, he's more open air. He does his religious ceremonies
The whole
under
forest is
moonlight
the
with
church.
crucifixes and spaceships.
Yeah, and a bridge. And oh boy,
Described 5 times.
You got to describe that bridge 5 times. The first 4 times aren't going to stick. And let me tell you something. When Tanis goes down to that bridge, Ted wanted you to be at the edge of your seat.
Which bridge was it, Ted? Just quick summary. By the way, Jesus shows up in the next book and his name is Justin in the other world.
Okay, sure, why not?
Okay.
He beats Tom in a sword fight, and eventually
Badass.
gets executed, bleeds into the water, changing the rules. There's more wars. After Rochelle dies, Tom falls in love with a scab woman.
Does his Monique romance go anywhere?
I don't remember. I'm going to be honest. The summaries, I read summaries today while I was, like in between work, of these extra plots because I knew it didn't matter that much. But I do want to read really quickly to y'all this quick summary. I'm just going to skim over it. from the wiki, from the Circle wiki, because that is a thing.
Go.
Wait, hold on. This franchise has its own wiki?
It's not a really good wiki.
Yeah, but still.
Unfortunately, it's not super well fleshed out, but it does have a wiki. And I mean, there are like 10 books that are in the extended continuity. And I just want to read how it describes Green, which is the book that he decided to come back for a fourth one, making it not the Circle trilogy in the Circle series. This is going to sound confusing.
Okay.
And you'll like it. Billy, don't worry about him, meets Tila with Marsuv. He takes his eyes and uses them to create a clone. He names the original Bill and the clone Billy. Billy is tasked with returning to Earth in the current time as the Antichrist. Bill will travel right before Thomas first dreamed and kill him. That is the beginning of Black. Chalice finds Quarong just after he decapitates Ball. The Shitaiki Inferno above now seem to all have plummeted, devouring anybody now that the Circle is broken. And Elyon's vow broken as well. She cries for him to drown her, but he refuses again. Oh, the humans broke their vow with Elyon, not the other way around.
Okay.
Samuel, now infected with the disease and almost fully horrid after breaking Elyon's vow, decapitates her without realizing it was his half-mother. Quarong then kills Samuel. Thomas is met by the boy Elyon, who quickly shows him the battlefield, where the Horde are being dreadfully slaughtered with Tile's breath, which is a disease, affecting them, making it hard for them to move their joints. Elyon and Thomas jump through a lake and pop outside the Circle camp, where 7,000 remain. They travel following the warrior Elyon, which is a new form, to the battlefield. Elyon creates a new lake, red with a green center, while the Roush hold back the Shitaiki. All but Thomas dive, who is looking for Chalice and Samuel. He finds Quarong and adds where she is. Quarong drowns, crying for Elyon. Thomas is with Elyon and is given a second chance on the terms that he will not know it and is placed at any time and place that Elyon chooses, and without knowledge of anything that happens after that. Thomas accepts and finds himself in a shower. Kara is just leaving their apartment. Thomas goes to work.
Was he showering with his sister?
No, but close.
Okay.
Leaves after closing, and the start of Black is repeated, ending with him getting shot in the side of the head by Billy, who then follows him into his dream. The final words say that Thomas dreamed and nothing would be the same, creating a circle. And the end says the story continues in Black.
So hold on. Just a quick question here. Bill and Billy, two different characters, yeah?
Yeah.
Sort of. Billy is the clone of Bill.
Right, gotcha. Okay.
What?
From his eyeball, yes.
Yeah, from the eyeball.
None of these words are in the Bible. Most of them
I
aren't.
assure you, a lot of them are. I assure you.
Most of them aren't in the Scrabble dictionary.
Ball certainly is. He's a character. More demons get introduced. There's a wife of Satan. Marsavi's Black, who is a guy who wears a trench coat and a fedora and carries around machine guns and
we see don't we see him right at the end of this book?
I don't know if that's him or not. I don't recall.
No,
I don't think so. So yeah, that's that brings us to the conclusion of Black. How are we feeling, folks? Enlightened? Washed? Nelyon's love?
Just by the way, I have spent this entire episode Googling, like, I'm on like 8 pages deep on Google right now, searching Ted Dekker. I cannot find a single thing about Rochelle and this book.
Oh my God.
This might actually be a Socialist Shelf exclusive.
Unbelievable.
We just happen to
She's a known author. She's an author. Like, she's his most famous kid.
We stumbled across the glasses that we put him on, and then like the word incest just pops up on a billboard or whatever.
The They Live glasses. I feel like maybe when Marcus gives you a kiss that gives you a virus, call that a Latin link.
I genuinely don't know how one would read this book like not a Christian and then find themselves converted, right? Because again, there's so many like, rakes I step on trying to parse this narrative here that like I can't not focus on that, and if somebody's trying to get me to read the Bible after this.
Yeah, I'm going to go one step farther and say I have a hard time imagining someone who's not a Christian even finishing this book.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to run up against so many things, and then I mean, like outside of whether or not you think it's a good book, like if someone does enjoy the prose, I don't, but say they did. There's just the concepts you're going to run up against with Eden. You're going to be waiting for some shoe to drop. If you don't know what Eden is and you don't have the biblical understanding of Eden, like the literalist sense, you're going to expect this whole time to be secretly a cult. Elyon is the bad guy. Like that seems
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this seems like the fucking Midsummer Town. It's
Especially
not.
with everybody fucking, giggling and dancing and singing
And they have a every night they gather around the water and play, they said. Like it's a
Elyon plays too. Like he literally
That's
just
right.
like turns the world into like a like tube world just for fun, like with the ground on the top and the sky on the bottom.
They're like, "Ooh, Elliot is playing. How nice."
Oh, today
he's
we've
playing.
woken up with our skin on the inside and our bones on the outside. Isn't that funny?
Oh God.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, this
Elyon.
this was bad. This did a great deal of psychic damage to me. Which
Yeah.
that's par for the course for me with this evangelical shit. It's just the last thing that I guess I would say just about how it hit me. Whenever I go back to this kind of media, because like you, Jacob, I grew up on this kind of shit. I have a hard time not going back into a really bad headspace that I've been trying to get away from. That there is a piece of me that gets right back and just sort of slots into the assumptions and worldview and sense of taste even that I had as an adolescent and pre-adolescence. And in a way, it makes me really sad. It makes me sad that I wasn't reading a lot of actual good literature or watching actual good movies or anything like that. And instead, I was largely drinking from the slop trough because, as we were talking about a little bit earlier in the show, the reason that these things exist is that Christians, evangelical Christians specifically, really wanted alternatives to what they saw as the perverting effects of secular media. The problem is that it is almost impossible to create something truly original when the entire purpose of the media that you're creating is to be an alternative to something else.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. I as a vegan, it's like it would be interesting if someone said, we're gonna make a vegan burger and we're gonna intentionally make it like you're gonna be trying to make an imitation burger. And you're
Yes.
and I'm well aware that it's probably not gonna taste identical to the burger. And if they did, that would be very impressive. And the reason I'm eating it is not because of the taste, it's because of a different reason, right? Because of, diet or whatever. And it's the same way. It's like you're not innovating something new here. You're trying to imitate something else. And then you have this limitation. Unfortunately, instead of dietary, this limitation is ideological and
Yes,
extremely
yes.
dangerous.
The best vegan burger I ever had, it was I mean I don't personally like keep strictly vegan or whatever, but I did go to a vegan restaurant in Orange County, California, and it was the best plant-based burger I've ever had because it wasn't trying to taste like meat. It was
Mhm.
doing its own thing.
Yes.
Exactly.
Which is why every now and then C.S. Lewis actually was able to do some good stuff. I'll actually Paralandra is actually a pretty good book, I remember, even because it's fucking weird and really horny and he doesn't hide it. But that's a conversation for another day. He also wrote a lot of dumb shit. We talked about it with Aisha. But yeah, absolutely. You got to do your own thing. You got to go on your own path. And the last thing I'm going to say about this is in my library in my Christian school, we had, and this was library for elementary through high school. You had the kids section, and there were plenty of like kids books, and I read a lot of them. And then you got up to like adult, young adult, whatever. Wasn't a particularly big library, and I'd read a lot of the stuff. A lot of it were just like classics. I'd read the classics, and then it was like not even enough of them, but several. I'd read a few. And then it was these books. It was all the fucking Ted Dekker books, which is wild that they were on the shelf. It was all the Left Behind books, and it was some other authors of that thing. That's what was sitting there, and so that's what if I didn't want to read the children's book, that's what I read as like a curious evangelical child.
Yeah.
And intentional or not, whether Ted Dekker is writing it with the intention or not, it's limiting it's limiting such a broad subset of people. And it makes it even stranger that these books are so deeply fucking weird. And there's
Yeah.
just so much strange shit, like the weird neuroses of Ted specifically. Not even to mention the shit with his daughter. Holy shit. But like just the stuff in the text itself that you know without knowing about his personal life. It's just like there's just these weird stuff that's just setting off little synapses in the brain, and it is really odd that that is what forms the basis for a lot of people's stuff. But we dig our way out of it, we learn, and sometimes we go back to this. And for those who have no connection to that culture, I'm happy to sort of be your guide through Dante's Inferno on this one.
Yeah, well, that's a question that I had for you too, Lenore. Like, obviously, given that this level of engagement was not part of your upbringing, how does something like this hit you?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, because like even having the knowledge of this as a conscious alternative to like the mainstream culture, right? Even just the knowledge of it trying to be a different version of this thing that's supposed to lead you back to this narrative, right? Even that is enough to like you see the plastic in the like haunted house workers masks, right? It's you just kind of sail through it without really engaging with it because you know where it's supposed to lead, which makes all the incongruous stuff stand out all the more, whether it's the weird incest shit or like the moments of genuinely engaging and genuinely visceral prose that are here. And the whole time, yeah, you're like, man, I'm finding all these diamonds in this very, very rough, field that, I just wish there was a something better for them to be set in.
Well, the world of podcasts is a very, very rough field, but there are some diamonds in it. One of them is the worst of all possible worlds.
My God.
Josh, do you want to tell folks about your podcast if they're not already familiar? I mean, you've been on the show a couple times, but
Couple
why not?
times, and so too has my co-host AJ. But you know what? If you're not listening to the worst of all possible worlds yet, you probably should be.
Mhm.
Every week we do case studies in the pop culture of a dying empire, which the vast majority of the time is the American Empire. Occasionally it's the Japanese Empire. We've been talking about a lot more Japanese media lately, but again, just sort of thinking about the ways that the narratives that are presented to us in media interact with our real lives in the way that ideology behind the curtain it's always there even if you don't always see it.
It's
And
it's it's very, very it's really bleakly and starkly laid out, I think, in particular in y'all's recent Facebook episode,
yeah,
something that's part of, over a billion people's lives at this stage, just visibly becoming, going from something social to something totally profit driven.
yeah,
It's threaded through everybody's lives, and the way that y'all break these things down really does make these things it makes these things new and exciting to engage with.
thank you. Yeah, we do our best, and also it's not always doom and gloom. We like to do
Mhm.
fun ones too. We talked about Chrono Trigger last week. Like we're
Heck yeah.
we're always putting in a little spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. We got some people who listen to us for the coverage of stuff that we like. We have people who listen to us for coverage of the stuff that we hate, and then we have a lot of stuff in between. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check us out. Our website is worstpossible.world. And we also have a Patreon for those bi-weekly premium episodes, patreon.com/worst of all. And also, both of the illustrious hosts of this show have been on our show as well. So, there's that.
Indeed, indeed.
Mhm.
And I will say, talking about love and hate, we had a book we absolutely loathed this week, but unless something changes, we're going to have one we like quite a
Hell
lot next
yeah.
week. So, and we're going to have another very well liked guest back on the show. So, keep your eyes open for that. I'm not going to say it for sure because we have not scheduled the exact day of recording, but it's definitely going to happen. It might be the week after, but we'll see. We greatly appreciate you, Josh. We greatly appreciate you, listeners. Lenore, you have anything to close us out with?
A couple of years ago, I had a dream, and in that dream, I dreamed that Bill Watterson died.
Oh, no.
I went over to my aunt's house in this primary dream, and I took a nap, and I wake up into the secondary dream, and I'm watching Back to the Future with my housemate Rob Reiner. It's Robert Zemeckis Day. That's just what you do on Robert Zemeckis Day, is watch Back to the Future. And Rob says, hey, go to Bill Watterson's fan site, leave him a tweet in honor of the occasion, because in this world, Bill Watterson played Doc Brown and not Christopher Lloyd. You know, who drew Calvin and Hobbes? Who knows? So the website's been taken down, I find. This website, it says, has been taken down in honor of Bill Watterson's untimely passing. And Rob Reiner's like, oh, that's a shame. And then I wake up into the primary dream, and I immediately check my phone to see if it's legit. Wikipedia lists the date of Bill Watterson's death in this dream as March 3rd, 2025. And for 2.5 years, because I had this dream in January 2022, for 2.5 years, I have had that date saved in my phone's calendar. So when that date rolls around, we're going to see if I got a glimpse into the histories or not. That was on my mind this week, so I'm happy to finally contextualize it.
To be clear, Bill Watterson, please don't die.
No,
Thank you
don't
all
do
for
it, man.
listening. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see y'all next week.
Peace out.
Thank you for listening to Socialist Shelf Radio.